Chapter 941. That dazzling sword light illuminated this gloomy world. Jun Xiaoyaro gently stroked the Deluo sword embryo with one hand. The light of tribulation of heaven was enchanted inch by inch. Even the flying immortal patterns on the surface of the sword embryo seemed to be lit up as if they were alive. Jun Xiaoyaro waved the Deluo sword embryo and slashed out. Like a white-robed true immortal, his sword cut through the universe and illuminated the vast expanse. One of the 5 great divine arts, the heaven-slashing art, was added to it. A 1,000-foot sword light tore through the universe and directly slashed at the huge evil eye in the sky. The sword slashed down. The purple light beam, together with the evil eye, was directly split into 2 and dissipated. The Deluo sword embryo did not lose its momentum and directly slashed at the eye of despair. Crack. The surface of this quasi-emperor weapon-level evil bronze eye was covered in cracks. Then, it was directly shattered by the Deluo sword embryo. All kinds of fragments flew, and the remaining essence energy was absorbed by the Deluo sword embryo, becoming its nourishment and resources. How can this be? Li Jiuyi was completely dumbfounded and spat out a mouthful of blood. The quasi-emperor weapon-level eye of despair that he had nurtured for a long time was actually shattered. However, before he could be shocked, Jun Xiaoyaro casually slashed out with his sword, and sword chi surged, filling the world. Poochie. Li Jiuyi was sent flying, and a bone-deep wound appeared on his chest. If he was not wearing a soft armor woven from the black jade silkworm, this sword would probably have split his physical body into 2. Jun Xiaoyaro slashed down again, but an old servant appeared in front of Li Jiuyi. It was the old servant who had followed behind Li Jiuyi before. "Young master, it's about time to stop," the old servant said indifferently, and his expression did not look too good. After all, his young master was at a disadvantage. A true supreme being, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself as his eyes flickered. Li Jiuyi's old servant was a true supremacy expert. However, Jun Xiaoyaro was still not afraid. The corners of his mouth curled into a sneer as he said, "The one who challenged me before was also Li Jiuyi. Now, you want to end it after exchanging a few moves?" Not only did Jun Xiaoyaro not stop, but he also activated the light of calamity, light of reincarnation, and light of sin at the same time. The 3 powers of the supreme bone were added to the Deluo sword embryo. Once again, he slashed down with the heaven-cleaving incantation. The eyes of the old supreme being's servant trembled. He didn't expect that Jun Xiaoyaro would actually dare to attack him. "You've gone too far." The old servant's expression turned cold, and his eyes flashed with murderous intent. However, because Jun Xiaoyaro was the Ars Academy's ancient and unrivaled quasi-war god, he had no choice but to accept it. Therefore, even if he was given 10,000 guts, he would not dare to kill Jun Xiaoyaro in front of everyone. However, by injuring Jun Xiaoyaro and putting him in a difficult position, it could be said that he had regained some face for his young master. Asking for it, the old servant sneered inwardly. He directly attacked, and the might of a supreme being spread out. He was not from the infernal imperial family, but he also had the battle prowess of a supreme and could be considered a top-notch expert. Boom! The old servant pressed down with his hand, wanting to slap Jun Xiaoyaro away. In the end, blood spurted out. The Deluo sword embryo directly cut off one of the old servant's arms. What kind of power is that? The old servant revealed a trace of shock. He sensed the power of 3 different attributes on the Deluo sword embryo. Blood splattered everywhere. The blood of a supreme being smashed into the ground like a meteor, creating deep pits. A supreme being was injured by a quasi-supreme, and his arm was cut off. Countless foreign beings witnessed this scene, so shocked that their souls and primordial spirits were trembling. If they didn't see this scene with their own eyes, they wouldn't dare to believe it. After all, a 7th-level supreme being was not a 9th-level saint. Although it was very difficult to challenge a 9th-level saint, there was no lack of peerless geniuses who could do it. However, at the 7th-level supreme being, challenging someone of a higher level was even harder than ascending to the heavens. Even peerless geniuses found it difficult to do so. Not to mention, there was a fundamental difference between a quasi-supreme and a supreme. "Junior, how dare you?" The old servant was furious. As a supreme, he was actually injured by a quasi-supreme. His aura surged as he used his ultimate move. At the same time, the power of laws surged. The difference between a supreme and a quasi-supreme was whether they could control a complete set of laws. All cultivators below the supreme being level were cultivating their magical powers. But above the supreme, it was no longer a competition of magic power. Controlling the power of laws was the most important thing. Boom! As soon as the aura of laws appeared, the old servant's aura rose steadily, crushing towards Jun Xiaoyao. Elder Du, don't go too far. Behind him, Li Jiui also shouted when he saw this. It wasn't that he sympathized with Jun Xiaoyao. But if anything happened to Jun Xiaoyao, that ancient supreme of the Ars Academy wouldn't let him off. Although he had the support of the infernal imperial family behind him. But obviously, he couldn't stay in the Ars Academy anymore. Don't worry, young master. I know my limits. I'm just educating this arrogant junior, Elder Du said coldly. Educating me? You? As Jun Xiaoyao's voice fell, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He took a step forward, and the chaotic mist behind him surged. Heaven and earth seemed to have returned to their original state, and the chaotic tide surged. In this chaos, the shadow of a primordial god that was even larger than the universe's galaxy opened up the chaotic universe. It was the phenomenon of the chaotic physique, chaos splitting the heavens. Rumble. The aura of heaven and earth here surged, and pressure swept out. Everyone felt a suffocating pressure. Some people were even trembling. Under this phenomenon, they couldn't raise the slightest bit of fighting spirit. In Jun Xiaoyao's body, not only was there chaotic power surging. After the Supreme Bone's nirvana, the Supreme Divine Blood was also surging in his blood vessels, flowing throughout his body. This divine blood was sparkling and resplendent. It was divine and holy, causing Jun Xiaoyao's aura to rise steadily, and divine flames burned all over his body. The fourth paragon technique was unleash. His attributes soared in all aspect. Kill. Jun Xiaoyao's voice burst out. The fourth supreme technique caused his strength to soar, and it was combined with the chaotic sky-splitting phenomenon. The Zenith Heaven Sword embryo also slashed down with surging power. Boom. The sky-splitting phenomenon that was supported by the supreme technique directly sent Elder Du flying, and he spat out blood. The laws that he used were all crushed and shattered. Elder Du was indeed a supreme. However, there were also strong and weak supreme. Elder Du wasn't a peerless genius who became a supreme, so his strength was naturally not considered the top among the supreme. The two figures crossed each other. Jun Xiaoyao stopped in his tracks. The divine flames on his body dissipated, and the phenomenon also dissipated. So what if you're a supreme? Jun Xiaoyao said indifferently and put away the Zenith Heaven Sword embryo. On the other side, after a short pause, thousands of sword marks suddenly appeared on Elder Du's body. In the end, his body collapsed, and his primordial spirit dissipated. The power of laws that he had condensed also collapsed, turning into specks of light that returned to the world. Everyone present was stunned. Their throats seemed to be blocked, and they couldn't make a sound. He's dead. The chaotic body killed a supreme with the cultivation of a quasi-supreme, a real supreme, a living being shouted, still in a state of disbelief. A quasi-supreme killed a supreme. What kind of talent is this? Even Elder Mu was stunned. He was prepared to intervene. But now, even a supreme was killed by the chaotic body in 2 or 3 moves. Elder Du. Li Jiui was so shocked that his pupils were trembling. Even with his strength, if he squeezed out his potential and used all his strength, he might be able to injure a supreme, but it was impossible for him to truly kill a supreme. Where did this monster come from? Li Jiui found it difficult to maintain his composure as the young master of an emperor clan. While he was shocked, he also felt a trace of regret. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have provoked such a monster for a dispensable woman. Chapter 942. Originally, Li Jiuyun had wanted to use Jun Xiaoyao as a whetstone. But now, he had become a whetstone. No, perhaps he was not even qualified to be a whetstone. That was because Jun Xiaoyao had never even taken him seriously. To be able to make Jun Xiaoyao a whetstone one had to be at least at the level of the 7 minor emperors. For example, the dark echelon that was killed by Jun Xiaoyaro in the heavenly tomb. Only someone like that was qualified to be Jun Xiaoyao's whetstone. All the prodigies present were still shocked. After all, what they saw today had indeed refreshed their understanding of him. Defeating an opponent of the same level was one thing. But he could actually kill a prime. The chaotic body is unparalleled. Even Elder Mu was a little emotional and happy at the same time. The Ars Academy was able to recruit such a good seedling. And he also had a good relationship with the chaotic body. Fourth sister, did you see that? I told you that Sir would be fine. Tushan Chun puffed out her chest proudly, seeming to be proud of herself. However, she did not hear Tushan Wanwan's response. Tushan Chun turned her head and saw that Tushan Wanwan's cheeks were flushed, and her breathing was rapid. Her beautiful eyes flickered with an unprecedented brilliance. She actually looked a little infatuated with him. So powerful. If only I could exchange pointers with him. Tushan Wanwan's heart was beating very fast. She was a martial arts fanatic and advocated martial arts above all. The more powerful a prodigy was, the more he could attract her attention. And now, there was no doubt that she was attracted to Jun Xiaoyaro. Tushan Chun suddenly wrinkled her nose. She sensed a trace of dangerous competitive aura. However, they did not notice it. Behind them, Yun Xiaohe looked at Tushan Wanwan's appearance and felt a little uncomfortable. Her Royal Highness has never shown such an expression before, Yun Xiaohe said in his heart. He looked again at the handsome man in white who was the center of attention, and a trace of hostility flashed in his eyes. Even though he knew that he couldn't have any special relationship with Tushan Wnwan, he still wanted to be with her. But he didn't want to see Tushan Wnwan having a relationship with another man. In his heart, Tushan Wnwan would always be a noble and proud flower. And now, this flower was showing such an expression to a man. It was no wonder that Yun Xiaohe felt uncomfortable. On the other side, after killing a supreme martial artist with his own hands, Jun Xiaoyaro looked very calm. A supreme being like Old Man Du was considered weak among supreme beings. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, was not about to become complacent. He glanced at Li Jiui again. Li Jiui's expression was unnatural as he subconsciously took a few steps back. This small action stunned the surrounding sky prides. What did that mean? This meant that Li Jiuyun was subconsciously afraid of Jun Xiaoyaro. One had to know that Li Jiui was the young master of an emperor clan, a figure in the top 3 of the 10 great heavenly kings in terms of battle prowess. This kind of top prodigy of the other side actually felt fear towards another person. This was something unimaginable in the past. The primal chaos body is probably going to be famous in the 10 great provinces. Many sky prides sighed in their hearts. Jun Xiaoyaro calmly retracted his gaze. Killing a supreme being was already a show of might. If he killed Li Jiui and the others in public now, there would be a lot of trouble. After all, Li Jiui's identity was different from Prince Yang, Kong Qianqian, and the others. Those royal clans and top royal clans might be afraid of the so-called immortal king behind him. But the infernal imperial clan would not be so afraid. And only Jun Xiaoyaro himself knew. The so-called immortal king behind him was nothing but the evil thoughts of the gods that had been sealed away. There's no hurry. There will be plenty of opportunities to kill them in the future. Jun Xiaoyaro glanced at Li Jiui and the other 4 heavenly king-level prodigies as he thought to himself. In his eyes, these top foreign cultivators were just pigs and dogs waiting to be slaughtered. When he went to the desolate border in the future, he would naturally have the opportunity to destroy them. There was no hurry. Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro retract his gaze, Li Jiui and the others also subconsciously heaved a sigh of relief. Although their lives were saved, their expressions were not much better. One could imagine that if nothing unexpected happened, Jun Xiaoyaro would have a great reputation in the Ars Academy in the future. Among the 10 heavenly kings, who is his match? I wonder if Prince Nirvana, who is ranked first, has a chance. At the very least, only the sleeping princes will be able to suppress him. Li Jiui thought to himself. There was no doubt that Jun Xiaoyaro would be the leader of the Ars Academy as long as those sleeping princes did not show themselves. Haha, little friend's strength is really eye-opening. Now, there should be no one who doubts that little friend can obtain the quasi-war god status. Elder Mu laughed. His attitude was even more amiable than before. No one refuted. They were all convinced. Many women looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with sparkles in their eyes, looking at him with yearning. By the way, little friend, follow me to the inner court. That Jiyu Wushang also wants to see you. Elder Mu chuckled. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows slightly. The Jiyu Wushang of the Ars Academy wanted to see him? This was not good news for Jun Xiaoyaro. After all, the Jiyu Wushang of the Ars Academy was at least a chaotic Dao Lord. There were even quasi-immortal and immortal realm cultivators. Those people, strength, and vision were all extraordinary. It was difficult to perform in front of them and hide. Most people would feel weak and tremble just by looking at them. Not to mention deceiving them. Sure. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded lightly. His temperament was not to be underestimated. Besides, Jun Xiaoyao's vision was not small since he was young. What kind of big shots and big scenes had he not seen before? He could even face the legendary Azure the Arch calmly. Not to mention the Jiyu Wushang of the Ars Academy. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was about to leave with Elder Mu, a clear and hesitant voice sounded. Sir, may I have the opportunity to exchange pointers with you in the future? The person who spoke was Tushan Wanwan. She was a little nervous, which was rare. She looked at Jun Xiaoyaro anxiously. After all, Jun Xiaoyao's temperament was too aloof, as if he didn't care about anything. Ah! Did I hear it wrong? The Princess of Tushan actually took the initiative to invite him? The elites around were stunned and thought they had heard it wrong. The 5 princesses of Tushan were very proud. Ordinary men wouldn't even look at them, let alone take the initiative to invite them. I heard that Tushan is going to hold a marriage contest later. This chaotic body is going to become the public enemy of all men, some elites mumbled. Jun Xiaoyaro paused for a second and nodded lightly. Okay. Thank you. Tushan Wanwan was delighted. She would definitely gain a lot from exchanging pointers with a chaotic body. But she didn't notice that Tushan Chun, who was next to her, had a bitter look on her face. She had a feeling that she wanted to share her things with others. At the back, Yun Xiaohei, who was so humble that he didn't have a sense of existence, clenched his fists tightly. There was a touch of jealousy in his eyes as he looked at Jun Xiaoyao's back. Chapter 943. Elder Mu brought Jun Xiaoyaro to the inner courtyard of the Ars Academy. As for Tushan Wanwan and Tushan Chun, with their monarch family background, they could easily join the Ars Academy. Fei Qingxue was originally a little worried. But now, when one person achieved the Tao, even his friends and family could ascend to heaven. She was also considered Jun Xiaoyao's maid, so she could join the Ars Academy directly. Li Jiuyi and the others could also join, but they were too ashamed to stay here. They entered the academy with their tails between their legs. After Elder Mu and the others left, the entire place exploded. Jun Xiaoyaro had only just begun to show his strength at the Heavenly Immortal Banquet. But now, Jun Xiaoyao's fame had completely risen. 5 of the 10 heavenly kings had attacked, but they were all defeated by him. Li Jiuyi, who was in the top 3, couldn't even injure Jun Xiaoyaro. Even a supreme being was killed by Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro had become famous in one battle, and no one would doubt the true strength of the chaotic physique anymore. I think other than the sleeping princes and princesses, no one should be a match for the chaotic physique. That's right. Even Prince Nirvana, who is ranked first among the 10 heavenly kings, is probably not a match for Jun Xiaoyaro. Sure, don't talk nonsense. If Prince Nirvana finds out, your life will be in danger, someone warned. The leader of the 10 heavenly kings, Prince Nirvana. Although he was a prodigy of the blue-red spider lilies. But because he was backed by the mysterious and powerful Nirvana family, Prince Nirvana's personality was a little eccentric and arrogant. If he heard someone belittling him, he wouldn't have a good ending. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro followed Elder Mu into the depths of the Ars Academy. The Ars Academy occupied a large area. Looking around, there were cliffs and strange peaks, green pines and green cypresses. 10,000-year-old herbs were growing freely. There were all kinds of rare beasts jumping around the mountain streams. Rays of light shrouded the place, and immortal fog billowed. Many heavenly palaces floated in the air, like the residences of celestial immortals. Between the winding mountain range, there seemed to be a gathering of dragon chi, a myriad of phenomena, and purple chi rose. This is the Ars Academy. Even someone like Jun Xiaoyaro, who had seen much of the world, could not help but sigh inside after entering the Ars Academy. Worthy of being a top-level foreign academy. This reminded Jun Xiaoyaro of the Immortal Realm's Nine Heavens Immortal Academy. Although he had never been there. However, the Nine Heavens Immortal Academy would not be any weaker than the War God Academy. There should be a dragon vein under the Ars Academy, right? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Mu Laro smiled and said, of course. My Ars Academy nurtures a world of geniuses. Luck gathers there and naturally has the dragon vein to suppress it. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly, an inexplicable light flashing in his eyes. This was a dragon's vein that was formed by the fate of an entire realm. If he could absorb it into his own inner universe, wouldn't that be a huge boost to his power? Jun Xiaoyaro had already set his sights on the dragon vein. Of course, this had to be considered at length. About a quarter of an hour later, Mu Laro brought Jun Xiaoyaro to the depths of the Ars Academy. This place was shrouded in immortal fog and purple energy. With Jun Xiaoyao's sharp senses, he could sense it. There were many ancient and powerful auras hibernating here. From time to time, divine consciousness would sweep across his body. This place was also considered a forbidden area of the Ars Academy. Ordinary people were not qualified to set foot here. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm and composed. His body was the reconstructed chaotic physique. He was also a fateless one, so no one could detect his karma. In addition, he had the sky-stealing sun-swapping technique. Jun Xiaoyaro believed that unless a true immortal paid the price to investigate, it would be impossible to find out his background. However, which immortal would be so free as to pay the price to deduce his karma? Not to mention that Jun Xiaoyaro had used the heaven illuminating technique to manifest the evil thoughts of the gods to confuse the world. No immortal would offend another immortal in order to investigate his whereabouts. This was why Jun Xiaoyaro was confident. Of course, if it really came to a point where he had no choice, Jun Xiaoyaro also had a way. That senior lives here. I won't go in, said Mu Lao. Thank you for leading the way, senior. Jun Xiaoyaro cupped his hands slightly. You're welcome. Mu Lao smiled amiably. Not only did he have the chaotic physique, but his personality was also humble and polite. He was also favored by the ancient supreme. This child will definitely soar in the future. It's not a bad idea to build a good relationship with him now. Mu Lao cupped his hands and left, thinking to himself. Jun Xiaoyaro continued forward. In front of him was a purple bamboo forest, with a small bridge and flowing water. It looked like a mountain, but it was filled with purple energy and dragon energy. This place can be considered the source of the dragon vein, the place with the densest dragon energy, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. If he could cultivate here for a long time, the benefits would be extraordinary. He entered the purple bamboo forest. Soon, he was enlightened. In front of him was a residence that was full of immortal energy. There were pavilions and small streams around it. Jun Xiaoyaro was wondering who the ancient supreme who had taken a fancy to him was. Jun Xiaoyaro arrived in front of the residence. Just as he was about to speak, he realized that the door was half closed. Jun Xiaoyaro pushed the door open and entered. However, he was stunned and stopped in his tracks. Inside the door, a woman in a plain dress was sitting on a wooden chair and embroidering. She was shockingly beautiful. Her face was like a hibiscus and her eyebrows were like willows. Her long blue hair was soft and lustrous, and it poured down to her delicate butt. Her facial features were exquisite and beautiful. Her brows were like a painting, her skin was like snow, her lips were bright, and her teeth were white. There was no flaw to pick out. Her skin was fair and translucent, and it was so tender that water could be squeezed out. She was a woman who looked extremely beautiful. She was graceful, and the way she sat there embroidering was like a painting. The entire world became the background, and she was the only one who sat there gracefully, making the world pale in comparison. Even with Zhang Xiaoyao's vision and temperament, he was stunned for a moment. However, he quickly came back to his senses. He had seen many beauties. However, this woman was definitely one of the top 5. Zhang Xiaoyao's standards were already harsh enough. However, he was still a little surprised. "Miss, is the owner of this place not here?" Zhang Xiaoyao cupped his hands and asked. Only then did the woman stop embroidering, raise her head, and look at Zhang Xiaoyao for the first time. She was slightly stunned as well. Just like Zhang Xiaoyao just now. Perhaps she had never seen a man with such an outstanding temperament. "So, you're the one with the chaotic body?" The woman looked at Zhang Xiaoyao with her watery eyes. Could it be? Zhang Xiaoyao's expression changed slightly. He probed the woman's aura, but he found that he could not detect her depth at all. Either this woman's aura was too deep, or it was too shallow. Obviously, this was the forbidden area of the academy, the source of the dragon vein. Even if she was a maid, it was impossible for her to be so shallow that she had no cultivation at all. In other words, I was right. The woman stood up, and an aura as gentle as a river but as vast and unpredictable as the universe spread out and shrouded Zhang Xiaoyao. "This woman is the Supreme Elder who has taken a fancy to me." Even Zhang Xiaoyao was a little surprised. He initially thought the ancient Supreme Being would be a white-haired old man, or someone with a mysterious temperament who was superior to everyone else. However, in front of him was a charming and beautiful woman who could overturn the world. This was a little out of place. Zhang Xiaoyao felt that every inch of him was being probed by the divine consciousness of the woman in front of him. She's definitely not a 7th level supreme, she's a quasi-immortal level supreme. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes were filled with seriousness. He would not let his guard down just because the supreme elder in front of him was a woman. None of the quasi-immortal level experts from the other side were easy to deal with. This woman was on the same level as the Black Peacock King of the Peacock Royal race. "I can't detect your karma and past. You're like a fog without any origin or origin. Tell me the truth, you're from the celestial realm, right? What's your purpose in infiltrating R's academy?" The woman's sparkling eyes looked straight at Zhang Xiaoyao. Chapter 944. The woman's voice was gentle. Even if she was questioning him, it still sounded pleasant and gentle. However, the words that came out of his mouth were clearly pointed at Zhang Xiaoyao like knives. It could be said that if it were anyone else, they would definitely tremble in fear and wouldn't be able to remain calm when questioned by a pseudo-immortal. But Zhang Xiaoyao's expression was calm when he heard that. He just pretended to be surprised and asked, "Senior, why do you say that?" The woman was still looking at Zhang Xiaoyao. Being stared at by that pair of bright eyes, anyone would have their imagination run wild. But Zhang Xiaoyao was extremely alert. He knew that any pseudo-undying had the ability to reach the heavens. Even the slightest change in breathing couldn't escape a pseudo-immortal's perception. So Zhang Xiaoyao's breathing was steady, and he even deliberately controlled his heartbeat. It could be seen that Zhang Xiaoyao's acting had reached the pinnacle. In his previous life, if he didn't get an Oscar, it would be a waste of Zhang Xiaoyao's acting skills. "Your background is very strange. Did someone important help you hide it?" the woman said. Zhang Xiaoyao suddenly cupped his hands and said, "My status as a quasi-war god must have been recommended by you, senior." The woman paused and nodded slightly. "If that's the case, if senior thinks that I'm a spy sent by the immortal region, then I'll leave. The so-called quasi-war god identity, I don't need it." Zhang Xiaoyao flicked his sleeves, revealing a look of anger on his face at the right time. One could say that his acting was superb. Zhang Xiaoyao knew that at this moment, it was fine to be calm. But if he was too calm, it would also attract suspicion. At the same time, it was most appropriate to have some youthful spirit. It could be seen that Zhang Xiaoyao's intelligence was monstrous. He could see through people's hearts. No matter how strong a pseudo-immortal was, she was still a living being and had emotions. That was the flaw. The woman also showed some surprise on her face. To be honest, it had been a long time since someone spoke to her with such an attitude. Do you know who I am? The woman's gaze was deep. The ancient supreme of the academy, Jun Xiaoyaro said. My name is Luo Xiangling, but people are more used to calling me Queen Luo, said the woman named Luo Xiangling. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed inwardly. As expected, he was a quasi-undying like Peacock King. In other words, a quasi-emperor. However, for Jun Xiaoyaro, who had even seen a mythical emperor, a quasi-emperor did not seem to be much. Senior Luo King, if you suspect me, there is no need for you to summon me as a quasi-war god. Jun Xiaoyao's attitude was neither servile nor overbearing. He did not appear to be too arrogant, nor did he appear to be humble. Luo Xiangling looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with a less serious expression. Before this, when I said that you are someone from the immortal realms, I was merely testing you. But now, it seems that I was right. No matter if it's strength, temperament, or talent, they are all exceptional. You are worthy of being a quasi-war god. Luo Xiangling's tone softened. Actually, she had already scanned Jun Xiaoyaro. Apart from his mysterious background, there was nothing wrong with him. Jun Xiaoyaro also had the aura of dark matter unique to the foreign realms, and it was very thick. It was definitely not something that could be easily imitated by creatures from the immortal realms. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed inwardly. This Queen Luo did have some tricks up her sleeve. If it was someone with a weak temperament, they might have been exposed by Luo Xiangling. Luo Xiangling continued, the only thing that puzzles me is that I can't investigate your past and karma, but I can feel that there seems to be an undying existence behind you. When Jun Xiaoyaro heard this, he sneered inwardly. How could he come to the War God Academy unprepared? Before coming, Jun Xiaoyaro had used the sky-stealing sun-swapping technique to connect the karma of the god's evil intent to himself. This was also to prevent Jun Xiaoyaro from being spied on by those top experts from the foreign realms. Even if other quasi-undying existences or even undying existences tried to investigate him, they could only find out that he had karma with a mysterious undying existence. They would mistakenly think that the mysterious undying existence was protecting him and blocking his karma. Even if it was for the sake of the mysterious undying existence, the other experts would give him face and not pursue the matter. After all, the foreign realms were very big, even bigger than the immortal realms. Naturally, there would be some unknown mysterious experts. It was because Jun Xiaoyaro was quick-witted that he made sufficient preparations. Only then could he deal with everything calmly. He even dared to trick quasi-undying existences. Senior Luo Xiangling, you are too kind, Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. He had passed this hurdle for now. Jun Xiaoyaro couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Life was like a play. It all depended on one's acting skills. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled, I am just curious. Senior Luo Xiangling and I have never met before. Why would you recommend me to become a quasi-war god? Could it be because of the primal chaos body? As Jun Xiaoyaro finished speaking, he suddenly felt the temperature of the entire courtyard drop to freezing point. Luo Xiangling's exquisite and flawless jade face was expressionless. Good heavens, did he touch a minefield? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes turned dark. This Luo Xiangling seemed to have an unknown past. The only clue Jun Xiaoyaro had was that this Luo Xiangling seemed to be sensitive to the primal chaos body. What was the reason? However, Jun Xiaoyaro was very smart. He obviously wouldn't pursue the matter. He cupped his hands and said, I have been rude. It's fine. Since I recommended you to become a quasi-war god, then, are you interested in becoming my disciple? Luo Xiangling's words made Jun Xiaoyao's expression freeze. Become her disciple? To be honest, Jun Xiaoyao really didn't think of this. After all, the ancient and supreme Ars Academy usually didn't accept disciples. They were only the foundation and pillars of the academy. They themselves wanted to break through to a higher realm. How would they have the heart to teach disciples? However, to be honest, it would be better for Jun Xiaoyao to agree. After all, Luo Xiangling was one of the ancient and supreme giants of the Ars Academy. With her backing, Jun Xiaoyao became even more unscrupulous in his actions. However, Jun Xiaoyao had his own bottom line. He could only walk his own path. Until now, No one had the qualifications to become his master. Thank you for your kind intentions, Senior Luo Xiangling. However, I am unable to comply, Zhang Xiaoyaro said. Oh! Luo Xiangling was really surprised. Who was she? One of the ancient and supreme giants of the Ars Academy. It could be said that normal disciples couldn't even meet her, let alone become her disciple. However, Zhang Xiaoyaro rejected her. You have to rely on yourself to walk your own path. Only you know your own path, Zhang Xiaoyaro said. You are the most special man I have ever met. Luo Xiangling's watery eyes were very deep. She seemed to have the unfathomable depth of a quasi-immortal. However, she also seemed to have a purity that didn't belong to humans. This unique temperament made Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flash. He started to have suspicions about Luo Xiangling's background. He had some evil thoughts again. No, he had another idea. Although I used the evil thoughts of a god to create a mysterious quasi-immortal, it is still fake. If I really have a quasi-immortal backing me, then it will be more convenient for me to do things in the foreign realm. Therefore, the only way is conquer this Luo king. Chapter 945. Zhang Xiaoyaro was considering if he should hug Luo Xiangling's soft, slender thigh and use her as his backing. To be honest, Zhang Xiaoyaro had never purposely chased after a girl. Most of the time, it was girls who chased after him. Zhang Xiaoyaro did not want to be a scumbag, but he was helpless. His charm made him very popular with girls. He was forced to be a scumbag. Many people felt that it was fake for a girl to fall in love with a guy at first sight. However, Zhang Xiaoyaro had this charm. This was something that could not be helped. If possible, Zhang Xiaoyaro also wanted to be ordinary, just like the commoner prince, Zhang Bieli. Furthermore, Zhang Xiaoyao's heart was all on cultivation and enjoyment. He had no interest in becoming a Dao companion or getting married. This was also the reason why Zhang Xiaoyaro did not take the initiative to chase after other girls. However, he was now in a foreign land. Sometimes, he could not help himself. Zhang Xiaoyaro needed a real, substantial figure to back him up at the moment. Otherwise, all sorts of monsters would want to investigate his background and identity. Zhang Xiaoyaro could hide it for a while, but as long as he revealed a single flaw, he would be exposed. Actually, the best method was to agree to Luo Xiangling and become her disciple. However, Zhang Xiaoyaro had a bottom line and was insistent. No one had the qualifications to teach him this ancient anomaly. Therefore, he could only settle for the next best thing, which was to rope in this Luo queen to be his backing. However, what qualifications did Zhang Xiaoyaro have to rope in Luo Xiangling? His face was probably the only thing left. Of course, he might also have the primal chaos physique. This Luo Xiangling seemed to favor the primal chaos physique very much. Otherwise, she would not have recommended Zhang Xiaoyaro to become a quasi-god of war. Looks like I have to open up this Luo queen's heart and find out her background and past. This way, I can find her weakness and attack her in one fell swoop. Zhang Xiaoyaro thought. He had a good eye for people. This Luo Xiangling seemed to have the transcendence and depth of a pseudo-immortal. But in fact, there was something very pure in those eyes. The other pseudo-undying beings all lived like 10,000-year-old fox spirits. But Luo Xiangling was a little different. Zhang Xiaoyaro judged that Luo Xiangling probably didn't have much contact with people. He probably didn't have any family backing him, and had probably been alone for a long time. To put it simply, Luo Xiangling was a woman with pseudo-immortal realm strength who had lived for a very long time. However, she was a little naive. No matter how strong this kind of person was, in the eyes of an old fox like Zhang Xiaoyaro, he was still an existence that could be conquered and controlled. I don't want to be a freeloader, unless the situation forces me to. Zhang Xiaoyaro sighed in his heart. He had no background in the other side, so he needed the Luo King's support. Luo Xiangling glanced at Zhang Xiaoyaro. She naturally didn't know that Zhang Xiaoyaro was already thinking about how to conquer her. You can cultivate here in the future, there's a room next door. Also, although we can't be master and disciple, you can ask me if you have any questions about cultivation. Luo Xiangling's lips curled into a faint smile. She was gentle like water, beautiful and moving. Normal people wouldn't be able to resist this charm and would fall for it. Thank you, Senior Luo King. Zhang Xiaoyaro purposely revealed a joyful expression. This place was the source of the dragon vein. Cultivating here was indeed very beneficial to Zhang Xiaoyaro. After all, only ancient supreme beings had the right to live here. Even those elders, pseudo-war god prodigies, and so on could only live slightly outside. There was something more important. Zhang Xiaoyaro lived next door to Luo Xiangling. More importantly, it was convenient for him to investigate Luo Xiangling's past. Of course, this couldn't be rushed. Although Luo Xiangling had a kind of inhuman innocence, she was still a pseudo-immortal powerhouse. From how Luo Xiangling purposely said that he was a being from the immortal region, it could be seen that Luo Xiangling wasn't an extremely naive person. But this was good. Conquering her would be more interesting. With me around at Ars Academy, no one will make things difficult for you, Luo Xiangling said. Thank you, Senior Luo King. This junior is really flattered. Zhang Xiaoyaro smiled faintly, his handsome face was very bright. Luo Xiangling was slightly stunned, as if she was immersed in some memories. Then she came back to her senses and said, "Oh right, I still don't know your name." Junior's name is Yu Xiaoyaro. Zhang Xiaoyaro casually gave a name. In the eyes of the world, Zhang Xiaoyaro had already fallen in the ruins of God. No one would associate this with Zhang Xiaoyaro. Yu Xiaoyao. Luo Xiangling muttered silently. In the following period of time, Zhang Xiaoyaro lived in Luo Xiangling's courtyard. He lived in a room in the side courtyard. Although this courtyard looked simple, it didn't lack various spirit-gathering formations. Dragon qi surged, and purple filled the air. This kind of cultivation treatment wasn't something that ordinary people could enjoy, other than cultivating alone. Zhang Xiaoyao also often exchanged cultivation experiences with Luo Xiangling. Although the difference in cultivation level between the two was huge. But what surprised Luo Xiangling was that Zhang Xiaoyao's understanding of cultivation made her gasp in admiration. And Zhang Xiaoyao's understanding of Dao also made her gasp in amazement. Xiaoyao, I really wonder if you're the reincarnation of some old monster. Luo Xiangling joked. After spending some time with Luo Xiangling, Zhang Xiaoyao found that she seemed to be more innocent than he had imagined. She was just a little wary of outsiders and had set up defenses in her heart. But after getting acquainted, Luo Xiangling's character was quite good. She didn't have the so-called quasi-immortal arrogance. She had a strange temperament that was both powerful and pure. This kind of contrast was a bit of a quirk that poked at people. Senior Xiangling must be joking. Xiaoyaro shouldn't be considered old, right? Zhang Xiaoyaro said with a smile. Luo Xiangling also smiled. Her smile was beautiful, and her eyes were sparkling. But your understanding of Dao has made me feel enlightened. If I break through and become an immortal king in the future, it will definitely be thanks to you. Luo Xiangling seemed to be in a good mood. She hadn't chatted so happily with someone in a long time. Then it's Xiaoyao's honor. Zhang Xiaoyaro said. The two often communicated, and Zhang Xiaoyao also learned a lot. At least he learned that quasi-immortal was the quasi-emperor realm. It was to transform one's own laws into the real Dao. There were a total of 9 tribulations. Baptized by the 9 tribulations, and finally transformed into a complete Dao. This was the so-called Dao affirmation to become an emperor. The Scarlet Owl King was once a 9th tribulation quasi-immortal who successfully evolved the Dao and became an immortal king. And the Peacock King and the Luo King in front of him had been in the quasi-immortal realm for many years. Although Luo Xiangling didn't explicitly reveal her cultivation realm. But Zhang Xiaoyaro guessed that it was definitely around the 8th tribulation. This was already the strongest quasi-immortal. If Luo Xiangling broke through, then Zhang Xiaoyao's backing would be even stronger. And just during the time Zhang Xiaoyaro and Luo Xiangling spent together, the entire Ars Academy was also in turmoil because of Zhang Xiaoyao's matter. Because there was news from somewhere that Zhang Xiaoyaro met an ancient supreme, the peerless Luo King, Luo Xiangling, who was rarely seen by ordinary people. This simply caused an uproar, causing countless male disciples and even male elders in the academy to be envious and jealous to the extreme. Any male creature instantly turned into a lemon spirit, and their hearts were extremely sour. Luo Xiangling was the true goddess of R's academy. Not only was she beautiful, but she also had absolute strength and status. It was impossible for ordinary people to even meet her, but Jun Xiaoyaro was able to receive Luo Xiangling's attention. From Tushan Chun Chun to Tushan Wanwan, and then to Luo Xiangling. For a time, Jun Xiaoyaro simply became the public enemy of all men, the target of public criticism. Chapter 946. Why was Luo Xiangling so popular in R's academy? It was because of the ancient and supreme figures in the academy. They were either white-haired old men or some high and mighty, mysterious and cold existences. Only this Luo King was rumored to have the looks of a fairy. She was devastatingly beautiful, unlike the other quasi-immortal level existences that made people fear her. And more importantly, the Luo King had never had a Dao companion. He had always been alone. For various reasons, Luo Xiangling's popularity in R's academy was extremely high. She could be said to be a goddess-like existence. In front of Luo Xiangling, all the fairies and princesses in the academy seemed immature and pale in comparison. After all, who wouldn't want to say, "Auntie, I don't want to work hard"? Furthermore, this Luo Xiangling was an extremely beautiful old auntie. She had looks, power, strength, and status. Who wouldn't love such a fairy sister? After the news spread, the entire R's academy was in an uproar. Then, another piece of news spread. Luo Xiangling actually wanted to take in Jun Xiaoyaro as a disciple. However, Jun Xiaoyaro rejected her. This left countless male disciples speechless. This chaos physique is really impressive. She even rejected the Luo King's personal invitation. Hihi, she must be out of her mind. If it were me, I would kowtow to Lord Luo King to take me in. That's right. She really doesn't know how to grasp the opportunity. Many male disciples discussed with jealousy. However, the next piece of news left these male disciples dumbfounded. They could no longer mock her. What? That chaos physique is actually living with Lord Luo King. This news caused a huge uproar in the entire R's academy's inner and outer courts. A single man and woman living in the same courtyard. Although there was a huge difference in status and strength. However, many people knew about Jun Xiaoyao's temperament and charm. Furthermore, it was Luo Xiangling who recommended Jun Xiaoyaro to become a quasi-war god. This was very intriguing. Could it be that Your Excellency Luo King wants to eat young grass? Nonsense. What sort of transcendent existence is Her Excellency the Luo King? Even if the chaos body is invincible among the younger generation, it shouldn't mean much to her, right? That better be the case. Otherwise, my heart will break. Why are you heartbroken? The primal chaos body doesn't stand a chance, and neither do you. When the news of the two of them living in the same residence spread out, a large group of people were heartbroken. The man was heartbroken because of Luo Xiangling. The woman's heartbreak was naturally because of Jun Xiaoyaro. In front of the mountain gate, Jun Xiaoyao's white-robed figure had already captured the hearts of countless girls. So that they could have a fantasy object in the lonely night. In the R's academy, in an exquisite and beautiful pavilion. What? Sir is living with the Luo King. Tushan Chun Chun was not calm at all, not at all. The 9 furry fox tails on his back swung back and forth in annoyance. After hearing that Jun Xiaoyaro and the Luo King were living in the same residence, Tushan Chun Chun felt an inexplicable sense of anxiety and irritation. Miss Chun Chun, Sir isn't such a casual person. Perhaps he's just cultivating there. Beside her, Fei Qingxue was also present. After Tushan Chuanchuan's true identity was exposed, she changed the way she addressed him. That's right. Sir isn't such an ordinary person. I heard that the Luo King is very beautiful. How beautiful is she? Tushan Chun Chun crossed her arms and pouted. Fifth sister, I heard that young master is with the Luo King. Is he not back yet? Outside the door, Tushan Wanwan arrived. She was also a little anxious. She had previously agreed to spar with Jun Xiaoyaro, but she had not seen Jun Xiaoyaro for some time. When Tushan Chun heard that, she felt even more depressed. Then, as though she thought of something, her eyes lit up. By the way, tell Elder Mu to get Sir to come out and meet us. With this in mind, Tushan Chun rushed out impatiently. Seeing this scene, Tushan Wanwan shook her head slightly. It's not far from the groom search. What will this girl do then? In the depths of R's academy, in the purple bamboo forest, there was a small bridge over flowing water. During this time, Jun Xiaoyaro had been cultivating and meditating. If not, he would have an in-depth conversation with Luo Xiangling. To be honest, the experience of a quasi-immortal level fighter was very precious. Many important people's lectures were only qualified to be listened to by quasi-warguards. However, Jun Xiaoyaro and Luo Xiangling did not have a master-disciple relationship. Jun Xiaoyaro had carved out his own path and had a path that belonged solely to him. His vision and understanding of Dao had also benefited Luo Xiangling greatly. Gradually, Luo Xiangling no longer interacted with Jun Xiaoyaro as a senior or an important person. The two conversed like a man and a woman of equal status. Xiaoyao, some of your insights have really enlightened me. After another round of conversation, Luo Xiangling's eyes were very bright, and the corners of her lips were slightly raised. She had a faint joy. She did not know why, but she felt very comfortable interacting with Jun Xiaoyaro. This was a feeling she had never experienced before. Senior Xiangling's words have also enlightened Xiaoyao, Jun Xiaoyaro said with a smile. At this moment, Luo Xiangling's eyebrows twitched. She said indifferently, "Someone is outside." Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly and went outside. The person who appeared was Elder Mu. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's arrival, Elder Mu's eyes lit up. Compared to before, Jun Xiaoyao's aura was even more celestial. There was also a sense of stability and transcendence. It seems that you have benefited a lot from interacting with Lord Luo, Elder Mu said warmly. Yes, I have. May I know why you are here, Elder Mu? It's the Princess of Tushan. She wants you to go over, Elder Mu said. Usually, Elder Mu wouldn't bother with requests from disciples of the academy. But it was Tushan after all. He still had to give them some face. I understand. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly. He had been living too leisurely here recently. He had almost forgotten about the white-haired lowly. Jun Xiaoyaro returned to the room and explained the matter. Since you have something to do, go ahead, Luo Xiangling said lightly. Xiaoyaro, farewell. Jun Xiaoyaro cupped his hands slightly and turned to leave the courtyard. The corner of his lips curled into a faint smile. It just so happened that he needed to leave Luo Xiangling for a while. There was one move in the 36 stratagems, loosening the reins only to grasp them better. It was actually very simple. It was to let the girl familiarize herself with his presence. He would subtly influence her to get used to his presence. Then, he would suddenly leave, causing the girl to feel empty in her heart, as though she had lost something. The longer he was away, the more the girl's thoughts would wander. This was a well-tested move. I'll put it aside for a while. Distance makes the heart grow fonder, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. He would leave Luo Xiangling there for a while. Putting it aside for a while was not a bad idea. Following that, Jun Xiaoyaro came to the pavilion where Tushan Chun and the others were. Sir. Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro appear, Tushan Chuan's little face revealed a look of pleasant surprise. Like a swallow returning to its nest, she pounced to Jun Xiaoyao's side. Sir, what have you been doing all this time? Tushan Chun blinked her big eyes and asked. My stomach hasn't been very good recently. I've been living off a woman. Jun Xiaoyaro coughed dryly. Chapter 947. Living off a woman? With your cultivation, do you still need to eat? Tushan Chuan's little face was filled with suspicion. She obviously didn't know what he meant. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled and didn't explain further. By the way, I heard that you're living with King Luo. Is she pretty? Tushan Chun continued asking. She's very pretty, Jun Xiaoyaro answered honestly. That was the truth. Is it? Tushan Chuan's face fell. She was a little unhappy, and her heart ached. Then, as if she was unwilling to give up, she gestured with her hands in front of her chest. Is she big here? Jun Xiaoyaro was speechless. He was speechless. What was this little girl thinking? That was a quasi-immortal level expert. Staring at someone else's chest. Even if you want to die, that's not the way to do it. Little one, what are you thinking about all day long? Jun Xiaoyaro knocked on Tushan Chuanchuan's head. However, Jun Xiaoyaro thought about it. It didn't seem small. It had some weight. Most importantly, the shape and curve were perfect. Young master, you're finally here. You promised me that you'd fight with me, Tushan WN interrupted impatiently. Her martial heart was already somewhat unable to restrain itself. I promised Miss Wanwan before. Of course, I can. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. Then let's go to the martial arts arena. Tushan Wanwan was very happy. A charming smile appeared on her beautiful face. Looking at the two of them, Tushan Chuanchuan's big eyes rolled even more. They arrived at the martial arts arena. The martial arts arena was a large square floating in the air. There was an extremely strong defensive array on the surface that could block the fluctuations of battle. At the martial arts arena, many disciples of R's academy were sparring. That's the chaotic body? He's here. Jun Xiaoyao's arrival had undoubtedly attracted everyone's attention. Jun Xiaoyaro sensed that many men were looking at him with a hint of jealousy in their eyes. He thought about it for a moment, and understood. Femme fatale. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed. This principle was the same no matter where one went. However, he must win over Luo Xiangling. This bunch of bootlickers could only be envious. In the crowd, there was an inconspicuous and humble figure. It was a young man with black fox ears and a black fox tail. It was Yun Xiaohei. He wasn't qualified to join the R's academy, but because he was Tushan Wan's groom, he could come with her. At this moment, Yun Xiaohei saw Tushan Wanwan and Jun Xiaoyaro walking over side by side. He clenched his fists and his face darkened. It's just a normal spar. Yun Xiaohei comforted himself. Young Master Xiaoyaro, please. Tushan WN stood above the arena. She had learned from Jun Xiaoyaro that his name was Yu Xiaoyao. Tushan Wanwan flipped her slender wrist and a green spear appeared in her hand. Paired with her close-fitting green armor and her neat high ponytail, she looked even more valiant and formidable. Come. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. I won't hold back then. Tushan Wanwan attacked. The spear in her hand trembled and her dharmic powers burst forth. One had to admit that as the princess of an imperial family and a battle-hungry heart, Tushan Wanwan was not weak. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly and flicked his finger to meet Tushan Wanwan's spear. Young Master Xiaoyaro, don't underestimate me, Tushan Wanwan shouted. Clang. Tushan Wanwan was directly forced back and felt her arm go numb. So powerful. Tushan Wanwan's beautiful eyes brightened as if she had seen a treasure. Jun Xiaoyaro put one hand behind his back and used the other to fight Tushan Wanwan. He wasn't serious at all. It was like he was playing. As the two of them fought, Tushan Wanwan used all her strength. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, was calm and relaxed. As expected of the chaotic body, his strength is not to be underestimated. Of course. Although I'm a bit jealous, his talent and strength are there. What can I do? Many people sighed. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had fought thousands of rounds. Tushan Wanwan was panting, but she couldn't stop at all. She felt that Jun Xiaoyaro was deliberately teaching her, and her strength was also increasing significantly. Young Master Xiaoyao, take this. Tushan Wanwan's spear trembled and dharmic powers surged behind her. The illusion of a nine-tailed green fox appeared. This was the original form of the demon fox unique to Tushan. It could greatly increase one's combat strength. Below, Yun Xiaohei saw this scene and for some reason, his head suddenly throbbed. In the dark, there seemed to be a black fox as black as ink, exuding a destructive aura, watching him. There were 10 foxtails behind it. What's going on? Yun Xiaohei pressed his temples. He was still paying close attention to Tushan Wanwan. Oh, interesting. The original form of the demon fox. Jun Xiaoyaro was a bit interested. He casually threw out a palm, and the chaotic aura gathered and turned into a chaotic giant handprint. It was as if a corner of the sky was overturned. Boom! There was an explosion and ripples spread everywhere. A delicate figure fell from the sky at an extremely fast speed. It was Tushan Wanwan, even though she was not weak and had displayed the original form of the demon fox. However, his opponent was Jun Xiaoyao, someone who was capable of killing even supremes. Your Highness. Seeing this, Yun Xiaohei's face changed. He rushed out and wanted to catch Tushan Wanwan. Swoosh! However, the void flashed. Jun Xiaoyao's white-robed figure landed right next to Tushan Wanwan, who was falling. He held Tushan Wanwan's slender waist that was wrapped in soft armor with one hand. Although they were separated by armor, he could feel her amazing flexibility and elasticity. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to control my strength. I hope Miss Wanwan won't be offended, Jun Xiaoyao said apologetically. Tushan Wanwan's body stiffened and her mind went blank. Since she was young, this was the first time a member of the opposite sex hugged her. Jun Xiaoyao's arms were very strong, and the smell of his body was very pleasant. It gave her a sense of security that she had never felt before. Tushan Wanwan was in a daze, and her face turned red unconsciously. If the other sisters saw Tushan Wanwan like this, they would definitely exclaim, "How could a tomboy blush?" Miss Wanwan? Jun Xiaoyao tilted his head slightly and looked down at Tushan Wanwan. I'm fine. Thank you, Mr. Xiaoyao, for saving me, Tushan Wanwan stuttered. She did not dare to look into Jun Xiaoyao's eyes. She looked down. However, she inadvertently discovered that the red string tied to her snow-white wrist seemed to tremble slightly. Could it be? Tushan Wanwan's heart skipped a beat. She had found her Mr. Right? Otherwise, why would the red string move? Everyone around them was stunned. Good Lord, he hugged her just like that. Tushan Chuanchuan's crystal-clear eyes were wide open, and her rosy little mouth was wide open. She looked like she was shocked. On the other side, Yun Xiaohei's body froze on the spot as if he was struck by lightning. The footsteps he took froze in place. He looked at Tushan Wanwan, who was hugged by Jun Xiaoyao but did not show any resistance or disgust. Yun Xiaohei felt like his heart was being squeezed. It was so painful that he could not breathe. It was as if there were hundreds of thousands of thunderbolts roaring in his mind. The goddess in his heart was in the arms of another man, and she even showed an embarrassed look. The jealousy in his heart turned into shame and resentment. A dark and ferocious intent appeared in Yun Xiaohei's eyes. He did not even notice it. Chapter 948. Jun Xiaoyao sensed something strange. It was a faint dark aura, and at the same time, it was filled with extreme hostility. Jun Xiaoyao glanced around and saw the young man who rushed out of the crowd and seemed to be ready to step forward to save Tushan Wanwan. But because Jun Xiaoyao had already made a move, he naturally had no chance. A dark light flashed in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes. That young man gave him a very strange feeling. Young Master Xiaoyao, can you let go? Tushan Wanwan lowered her head and really didn't know how to deal with it. After all, this was the first time she was so close to the opposite sex. Sorry. Jun Xiaoyao let go of his arm. Tushan Wanwan blushed and broke away from Jun Xiaoyao's arms. But there was a trace of nostalgia in her heart. That embrace did give her a very warm and steady feeling. Who is this? Jun Xiaoyao looked at Yun Xiaohei. Tushan Wanwan hadn't come back to her senses yet. After a long while, she said, "Oh, he's my groom. It's good that your highness is fine." Yun Xiaohei lowered his head and didn't want Jun Xiaoyao to see the jealousy in his eyes. Jun Xiaoyao was so sensitive that he had already noticed it. He also immediately understood that Yun Xiaohei should have a longing for Tushan Wanwan. It was just that the difference in status was too big, so he could only hide it in his heart. But now, seeing the goddess in his heart being held in the arms of another person, naturally, he would have such feelings. Jun Xiaoyao actually didn't care. There were many people who were jealous of him. He wouldn't care about a lowly servant. But what caught Jun Xiaoyao's attention was the faint dark aura exuding from this young man. This attracted his attention. Interesting. Let's wait and see, Jun Xiaoyao thought to himself. He didn't know if there would be such a coincidence, and it would be just as he guessed. Young Master Xiaoyao, in the future, will I still have the chance to spar with you? Tushan Wn blushed and asked. She felt it too. Although she had only fought with Jun Xiaoyao once, Jun Xiaoyao had given her a lot of pointers in the process. She felt that she was making rapid progress. Of course. I'll be waiting for you anytime, Jun Xiaoyao said. In any case, he didn't plan to return to Luo Xiangling's place for the time being. Thank you, young master. Tushan Wn said happily. This caused the two of them to feel very stifled. One of them was naturally Yun Xiaohei. The other person was naturally Tushan Chun. Her face was as black as the bottom of a pot. If you need anything, just come to me. Jun Xiaoyao flicked his sleeves and turned around to leave. Tushan Wanwan stared at Jun Xiaoyao's back blankly. At this moment, a clear and sweet voice sounded with an angry tone. Sister Wanwan, I think we need to have a good talk. Tushan Chun put her hands on her hips and looked very serious. Little Five, are you jealous? Tushan Wn raised her eyebrows. Mph, although we are sisters, we still have to pay attention to the order of arrival. I was the one who started it. Tushan Chun puffed up her cheeks. There's no order of arrival when it comes to love. It belongs to whoever grabs it first. Tushan Wn snorted. Ah, Sister Wanwan, you really have feelings for young master. No way. Tushan Chun pounced on Tushan Wn like a hungry cat pouncing on its prey. The two women were fighting together, which was a beautiful scene. However, many of the male sky prides present felt sour in their hearts. One of the elites said in a daze, if this continues, does Tushan still need to hold a matchmaking contest? In the following days, Jun Xiaoyao didn't return to Luo Xiangling's place. Of course, he didn't waste any time. As the Ars Academy's quasi-god of war, the resources Jun Xiaoyao could mobilize were shocking. It could be said that they were definitely not inferior to the direct descendants of those immortal emperors. In fact, they were even more generous. Even with Jun Xiaoyao's experience, these resources were not cheap. Elixirs of immortality, divine weapons, immortal gold ores, immortal letters, powerful cultivation techniques, and so on. As long as Jun Xiaoyao wanted it, he could get it. He didn't hold back. Wasn't it good to get it for free? Those divine weapons, immortal gold ores, and immortal gold ores were all absorbed by Jun Xiaoyao's myriad Qi Cauldron and Zenith Heaven Sword Embryo. These two weapons were already pseudo-emperor weapons. And they both had the potential to evolve. The Zenith Heaven Sword Embryo would at least become a pseudo-immortal weapon in the future. It might even become a true immortal weapon. As long as the myriad Qi Cauldron had enough resources, it could easily become an immortal weapon. In addition, Jun Xiaoyao was also reading those immortal letters and powerful cultivation techniques. The foreign realms' cultivation techniques were very different from the celestial domains. Jun Xiaoyao was verifying the foreign realms' cultivation techniques, comparing them with the celestial domains. In the end, he refined the essence and used it to sublimate his own cultivation techniques and Tao. Although this kind of improvement couldn't be clearly reflected in his cultivation realm. But for Jun Xiaoyao's future cultivation, condensing the laws and transforming the great Tao, it was extremely helpful. Of course, during this period, Tushan Wanwan would come to find Jun Xiaoyao to spar every few days. Jun Xiaoyao didn't refuse. The relationship between the two became more and more harmonious. Whether Jun Xiaoyao was sincere or not, only he knew in his heart. As for Tushan Wanwan, she was more and more tempted. Try asking. There was a mysterious, powerful, handsome, and gentle man who was willing to cultivate with you every day. Even if you were a weakling who wasn't worth mentioning in his eyes, he would still patiently teach and guide you. Which woman wouldn't be tempted? Tushan Wanwan could even tie the red string of marriage to Jun Xiaoyao. It was just that she felt a little embarrassed and didn't do so. Tushan Chun also had a face full of jealousy, forcefully interrupting, also wanting Jun Xiaoyao to spar with her. For a time, Jun Xiaoyao's life became a little more interesting. Of course, there was a contrast. It was Luo Xiangling's side. In the courtyard. Luo Xiangling was dressed in a plain long dress, outlining her hazy and slender perfect figure. Her long blue hair scattered over her delicate buttocks, setting off a snow-white peerless dimple. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, her eyes like stars, her red lips were a little bit, and her teeth were like jade. Her exquisite and beautiful appearance could be said to be rare in the world, unforgettable at first glance. It could be said that such a woman, anyone who saw her would find it hard to forget, wishing to see her every day. Not to mention, being able to live with this woman was simply the blessing of 3 lifetimes. However, Jun Xiaoyaro, who had such good fortune, didn't return for a month after leaving. It even gave people the feeling of abandoning his wife. Still not back yet. Luo Xiangling murmured. She thought that Jun Xiaoyaro would come back in 2 or 3 months. But now a month had passed, and Jun Xiaoyaro still hadn't come back. Of course, Luo Xiangling could also check with her divine consciousness, but she didn't do so. I'm obviously used to being alone. Luo Xiangling stretched out her slender fingers and rubbed her temples. It had been such a long time, and he had come here alone. Why did it feel so lonely now? Maybe it was because discussing Dao with Jun Xiaoyaro gave Luo Xiangling a long-lost sense of joy. Let's go and take a look. In the end, Luo Xiangling couldn't help but want to know what Jun Xiaoyaro was doing. She usually didn't leave her courtyard. With Luo Xiangling's quasi-immortal level cultivation, naturally, she could arrive outside Jun Xiaoyao's residence in an instant, and no one would notice. Luo Xiangling saw at a glance that Jun Xiaoyaro and Tushan Wanwan were very close, their bodies leaning against each other. Jun Xiaoyaro leaned close to Tushan Wanwan's ear, as if he was saying something to her. Seeing such an intimate scene, Luo Xiangling was stunned. Chapter 949. When you make a move, you have to fully mobilize the spiritual power source in your spiritual sea. Unite your waist and horse, and concentrate the energy on one point. Jun Xiaoyaro stuck close to Tushan Wanwan and pointed at her body. Wherever he pointed, Tushan Wanwan would feel numb. Although she knew that Jun Xiaoyaro was seriously teaching her, Tushan Wanwan's pretty face was still hot and red. Tushan Chun, who was on the side, ground her silver teeth, as if she had turned into a little resentful wife. Jun Xiaoyaro sensed a trace of abnormality. The corners of his mouth curved into an imperceptible arc. Did she really come? Although Jun Xiaoyao's godly soul was very sensitive, logically speaking, it was impossible for him to detect Luo Xiangling in the dark. However, when he was with Luo Xiangling, he deliberately put some light incense on his body. When Luo Xiangling discussed Dao with her, she would naturally be stained with a trace of this incense. So now, when Jun Xiaoyaro smelled this trace of incense, he could conclude that Luo Xiangling had come. She just didn't show up and hid in the dark. Luo Xiangling probably wouldn't have thought that the trace of incense she ignored would actually let Jun Xiaoyaro detect her presence. From this, it could be seen how scheming Jun Xiaoyaro was. Compared to him, although Luo Xiangling was strong, she seemed a little naive. Are you teaching others? Luo Xiangling murmured. This should have been a very normal thing. However, in Luo Xiangling's heart, she didn't know why, but there was a little knot in her heart. It was very small and subtle, but it really existed. In fact, this couldn't be considered as real jealousy. After all, Luo Xiangling was a quasi-immortal after all. She wasn't the kind of girl who was young at heart and wouldn't fall in love so easily. It was even more impossible for her to have any feelings for Jun Xiaoyaro during this period of time. At most, she would have a good impression of him. But this was human nature. For example, a person of the opposite sex who was talking to you intimately just a moment ago would suddenly become intimate with another person of the opposite sex in the next moment. What would you think? Even if they weren't in a romantic relationship, wouldn't they feel a little uncomfortable? This was what Jun Xiaoyaro was sure of. Let's leave Luo Xiangling alone for a while. Then, he would make her feel this strange emotion. If he couldn't even generate this kind of emotion, then there was no chance at all. This also meant that Luo Xiangling had no feelings for Jun Xiaoyaro at all. However, from the looks of it now, that was clearly not the case. Luo Xiangling was silent. He didn't show himself, but turned and left. He noticed that the wisp of fragrance had dissipated. Jun Xiaoyaro let go of Tushan Wanwan. Young master, please give me some more pointers. Tushan Wanwan had learned to act like a spoiled child. Sis Wanwan, you've gone too far. Tushan Chun pouted. Acting coquettishly was her privilege. Just practice according to my instructions. Jun Xiaoyaro shook his head with a smile. Tushan Wanwan probably didn't know that she was just a tool in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes. Meanwhile, on the path outside the pavilion, Yun Xiaohei was waiting here with the heavenly feather horse. He clenched his fists so tightly that his teeth were about to break. Every few days, Tushan Wanwan would ride the heavenly feather horse to Jun Xiaoyao's residence to spar. This feeling was like watching a goddess go to someone else's room every day. Although it had nothing to do with him, Yun Xiaohei always felt that he was being cheated on. The fourth princess, who used to be noble and unparalleled in front of him, was acting like a sycophant, coming to see him every few days. If I have enough strength, if I can defeat that person with the chaotic body in front of Her Highness, Yun Xiaohei clenched his fists tightly. If he was strong enough, he could defeat the person with the chaotic body and be valued by Tushan. Tushan Wanwan would naturally look at him in a different light. Weakness was the original sin. Come back. In Yun Xiaohei's mind, that demonic voice appeared again. Forbidden land, demon sealing tomb, go and find the power that belongs to you, demon sealing tomb. Yun Xiaohei was stunned. That was an absolute forbidden land in Tushan's state. There were few people there. What secret is in my body? No matter how stupid Yun Xiaohei was, he understood that there seemed to be some unknown power in his body. He touched his abdomen and felt that the dark hexagram mark was burning. The matchmaking event is my only chance. If I can get the power to defeat the person with the chaotic body, then Her Highness, Yun Xiaohei's eyes showed a hint of determination. He would never give up the goddess in his heart. Time passed day by day. More and more prodigies gathered at Ars Academy. News came that there seemed to be some movement at the desolate border. In the near future, Ars Academy might send people to the desolate border to train and compete with the monsters of the Nine Heavens Immortal Academy. Therefore, the entire Ars Academy was seizing the time to cultivate. There was also news that some of the sleeping princes and princesses were about to wake up. At that time, they would also come to the academy and then go to the desolate border. In short, the atmosphere of a storm was spreading. There would be a cruel battle soon. At that time, the desolate border would not be as small as the world of the divine ruins. The desolate border. At that time, we should be in contact with the celestial realm. The 7 defiant emperors, Gu Tiezi, Long Yarrow Feather King, and the others, how are they doing? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes surged with coldness. If they knew that not only did he not die, but he had also transformed into the chaotic body, and could even transform into a quasi-carnate sacred body Dao fetus, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall out. And my followers, Yang Qingying, Yi Yu, and the others, everyone from the Jun family, Jun Bieli, did he fulfill his promise and let the hidden bloodline return? The dormant seed should have been born by now. How are Sister Sheng Yi and the others? Jun Xiaoyaro had many questions in his heart. After he was stranded in the foreign realm, he was directly isolated from the celestial realm. He could not find any news. Only in the desolate border could he come into contact with the celestial realm and find out news from there. Has the celestial realm forgotten about me? I'm really looking forward to it. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. A king would return one day. At that time, everyone in the celestial realm would know about this game against the heavens. He won. After ignoring Luo Xiangling for so many days, it's time to go and see her. Jun Xiaoyaro got up and prepared to go to Luo Xiangling's side. The desolate borders matter still needed some time. There was no rush now. Right now, the most important thing was to cultivate, and then rope in Luo Xiangling. Jun Xiaoyaro did not want to ignore Luo Xiangling for too long. There had to be a limit to everything. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was about to go, Fei Qingxue brought a piece of news. Sir, the Heaven's Chosen meeting is about to begin. Are you not going? Heaven's Chosen meeting, what is that? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. He was not in the mood to participate in some miscellaneous meeting. Unless it was the immortal banquet, where he could gain something. Because the War God Academy's selection requirements are very high, and there are only about 10,000 spots. Many geniuses find it difficult to enter. Therefore, they want to become the followers of the Academy's disciples and indirectly enter the Academy to cultivate. Sir's name now shakes the 10 great provinces, and you are the quasi-war god of the Academy. Who knows how many young elites and geniuses want to follow you? Fei Qingxue said. When Zhun Xiaoyaro heard this, he understood. After all, it was just a selection of followers. It was difficult for them to fight for a spot in the Academy, so they followed those geniuses who had already entered the Academy and joined the Academy. There's no need for that for now. Zhun Xiaoyaro was not interested and shook his head. He did not need any followers now. Sir, there's one more thing. At the Heaven's Chosen meeting, the Nirvana Prince of the Blue Hurricane Lily bloodline will also appear. I heard that he's going to execute someone in public. Blue Hurricane Lily bloodline? Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes lit up. The Nirvana family was also a bloodline he needed to investigate in the future. He wanted to find out what kind of karma the Nirvana family had with that ghost-masked woman. Who is he going to execute? Zhun Xiaoyao asked casually. I heard that it's a traitor of the Nirvana family. In the world of the ruins of God, he once blocked the attack of the Zhun family's son of God. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes narrowed, and a hint of coldness flashed across his eyes. Chapter 950. She had taken a blow for him in the ruins of God. Other than Xian Yu, there was no one else. Just as Zhun Xiaoyaro had expected, Xian Yu had landed in the alien territory with him. However, due to the spatial turbulence and other circumstances, she had landed in a different place from him on the way. In the ruins of God, Xian Yu had stood in front of him. This was something that many alien territory creatures had witnessed with their own eyes. Now that someone had discovered Xian Yu's tracks in the alien territory and captured her, it was only natural that she would be viewed as a traitor. Sir, feeling the sudden drop in temperature, Fei Qingxue couldn't help but tremble slightly. It's fine. There's no harm in going and taking a look, Zhun Xiaoyaro said. Fei Qingxue nodded slightly. It was only then that she realized that Zhun Xiaoyaro, who was usually gentle and refined and always had a gentle smile on his face, had a cold look in his eyes. However, Fei Qingxue didn't dare to casually guess Zhun Xiaoyao's thoughts. Executing Xian Yu, hehe, Zhun Xiaoyaro sneered in his heart. Although he didn't have a good impression of Xian Yu. After all, Xian Yu had once injured Jiang Xingyi and even almost threatened Jiang Xingyi's life. However, Xian Yu had taken a blow for him. This was something that Zhun Xiaoyaro hadn't expected. However, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Xian Yu was from the Nirvana realm. She was wearing a ghost mask, which made Zhun Xiaoyaro feel that she was similar to the ghost mask woman. Therefore, even if it was to find out some information about the Nirvana realm, Zhun Xiaoyaro wouldn't let Xian Yu die for the time being. Prince of the Nirvana realm. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed with indifference. He didn't care about the Blue Hurricane Lily at all. No one could touch the person he wanted. The location of the Chosen One Grand Ceremony was in a city not far from the Ars Academy. Right now, this city was already packed with people, and there was a sea of people. There were more than 100,000 prodigies gathered here. Many of the Sky Prides were dressed luxuriously. Their auras were extraordinary and their auras were extremely powerful. It wasn't that many of them couldn't meet the requirements of the Ars Academy. The Ars Academy only had so many spots. There were only 9,999 spots in the outer courtyard. The inner yard was even rarer. There were only 999 seats. This resulted in a situation where there were too many monks and too little gruel. Not to mention the elites of the monarch clans and pseudo-monarch clans. They were practically guaranteed to be admitted to the Ars Academy. Then, the remaining spots would be even fewer. Therefore, the only way to enter the Ars Academy was to enter the Ars Academy. That was to become a follower of those disciples of the Academy. Of course, even though they were followers, if their statuses were similar, they would only treat each other as equals. It was equivalent to asking a friend to pull strings. This was also something that the Ars Academy had tacitly acknowledged. It could be considered a form of tolerance as long as it didn't break the rules. It was because of this that the atmosphere in the entire city was extremely lively. The square in the center of the city was densely packed with people. Gosh, that's the heavenly talent of the Nether Shadow royal family. The young geniuses of the Ghost Eye royal family are also here. TSK, why does it feel like this chosen one gathering is much livelier than before? Of course. After all, there's a quasi-god of war with the chaotic physique. I guess many people are here for him. Many conversations and discussions could be heard in the square. Although the previous chosen one gatherings were also very lively, they were not as popular as this one. The most important reason was naturally because of Jun Xiaoyaro. The quasi-god of war who was first selected had the chaotic physique. If they could follow Jun Xiaoyaro, they would be able to ascend to the heavens. If Jun Xiaoyaro could really become a god of war in the future, then they would be the followers of the god of war. Moreover, there was news recently that one of the ancient supreme beings of the academy, the Luo King, thought highly of Jun Xiaoyao. This made many prodigies want to become Jun Xiaoyao's followers even more. Among them, there were more female prodigies than male prodigies. I heard that the chaotic physique has the looks of a banished immortal. He's powerful and handsome. I love him. Why don't you squat down and pee in a pool of water and look at yourself? Do you think the Lord Chaotic Physique will take a fancy to you? You bunch of flirtatious B***** keys are not qualified to follow that lord. Many female prodigies started arguing with each other. They're here, the people from the Ars Academy are here. Suddenly, a prodigy shouted loudly. In the distance, many ships, flying boats, mounts, and carriages flew over. They were all disciples of the academy. Leading them were a few of the 10 heavenly kings, Li Jiui, Jin Zhon, and the others. So that lord hasn't come yet. How disappointing. Do you think the Lord Chaotic Physique won't recruit followers? Then what's the point of us coming? Some female prodigies glanced at the newcomers and were slightly disappointed. Hearing those discussions, the corners of Li Jiui's eyes twitched. If it weren't for the fact that these prodigies had powerful backgrounds, he really wanted to slap them. Tempage, I heard that Prince Nirvana is also coming this time. I want to see if that Lord Chaotic Physique dares to provoke the leader of the 10 heavenly kings. Li Jiui thought coldly. At that moment, a cold female voice sounded. No matter what, I believe that I will be able to gain the favor of the Lord Chaotic Physique. A beautiful figure flew over from afar. It was a woman in a blue dress. She had a graceful and beautiful temperament, and her appearance was also extremely good. Her cold and beautiful appearance made the hearts of many prodigies skip a beat. They couldn't help but feel stunned. There was a blue crescent moon mark between her eyebrows, indicating her identity. She was from the Quasi-Emperor clan, the Blue Moon clan. It's Fairy Yu Dai of the Blue Moon clan. She actually came here to become a follower? Many prodigies were stunned. They felt like their jaws had dropped. The Blue Moon clan was a Quasi-Emperor clan. They were high and mighty. Although Fairy Yu Dai was not a direct descendant of the Blue Moon clan, she was still a prodigy with quite a status. She was definitely much nobler than Kong Qianqian of the Black Peacock royal clan. However, such a beautiful woman actually had to come here and become someone else's follower. This really made everyone's jaws drop. With Fairy Yu Dai's status, she should be able to directly join the Ars Academy, right? I reckon her goal should be the chaotic physique. After all, the status of a quasi-god of war's follower is much nobler than that of an inner yard disciple. Many people looked at Fairy Yu Dai and discussed in low voices. Some of the women's eyes were even gloomy. They were all good-looking, and many of them were princesses of the royal clan. However, compared to Fairy Yu Dai, they were instantly overshadowed. It was like comparing a firefly to the bright moon. It seems like only Fairy Yu Dai will be chosen by the chaotic physique. Some female prodigies sighed. Fairy Yu Dai, you're here too. Why don't you come with me? Of course, being a follower is just a title. Li Jiui said when he saw Fairy Yu Dai. The prodigies present were all extraordinary, but only Fairy Yu Dai stood out like a crane among chickens. Her appearance, status, and strength were all the most outstanding. She was even nobler than his previous concubine, Kong Qianqian. Fairy Yu Dai shook her head slightly and said apologetically, "Thank you for your invitation, young Master Li Jiui, but Yu Dai already has a candidate she likes." "All right then." Hearing this, Li Jiui pretended to nod indifferently, but the trace of embarrassment in his eyes could not be erased. He was a dignified young master of the monarch clan. He took the initiative to invite her, but he was rejected. It was simply humiliating. It's that chaotic physique again. Li Jiui cursed in his heart. Jun Xiaoyaro alone made it so that he could not even take in a follower he liked. Just sitting by his side with the chaotic physique will cause one to be tainted by the chaotic will, not to mention that he also has the status of a quasi-god of war. With my charm, I will definitely be able to capture him and have sex with him. If I can give birth to a child with the chaotic bloodline, then my status in the Blue Moon clan will be even higher than that of the Heavenly Maiden. Fairy Yu Dai's expression was noble and cold. However, in her heart, she was thinking about how to seduce Jun Xiaoyaro. Give birth to a child with the chaotic bloodline. Her train of thought was amazing. Chapter 951. Fairy Yu Dai was extremely confident in her appearance and figure. She was not a peerless beauty like the 5 beauties of Tushan, Meng Nu or Luo Xiangling. However, there were also many male prodigies who had fallen for her. It could be said that even some of the emperor race prodigies, young masters, and so on would favor her. Li Jiui's invitation was an example. However, Fairy Yu Dai was very ambitious. She was unwilling to accept the status quo. Her status in the race was not that of an emperor or a goddess. Therefore, the only way was very simple, to climb up the social ladder. As for Jun Xiaoyaro, his name had shaken the 10 great states some time ago. He had a chaotic physique, and it was rumored that he had a mysterious immortal backing him. In addition, his temperament was like a perfected immortal, and his appearance was peerless. Such a person was simply the ideal partner for Fairy Yu Dai. Among the prodigies present, only I am most qualified to be accepted as a follower by the chaotic physique. Fairy Yu Dai's beautiful eyes swept across the square. There were many outstanding prodigies, but few could compare to her. Generally speaking, the chances of the opposite sex being accepted as a follower were higher. After all, the followers of some prodigies also played the role of concubines. Next, some of the academy's disciples began to choose their followers. Li Jiui also chose a few female followers with a sullen expression. However, the quality was clearly not as high as Fairy Yu Dai's. The fact that Jun Xiaoyaro was still nowhere to be seen made some of the geniuses present secretly anxious. Even if they were not qualified to be chosen by Jun Xiaoyaro, it was still good to be able to admire this chaotic physique. After all, it was a rare physique that many people had never seen in their entire lives. Fairy Yu Dai was very calm. She stood on the ground like a blue immortal flower. A small empty space was cleared around her. No one dared to offend Fairy Yu Dai. In the midst of the crowded crowd, there was a thin and dirty girl who was being squeezed. She was a girl about 15 or 16 years old. She was wearing a somewhat dirty and tattered red dress. Her hair was also a little messy, covering her eyes and part of her cheeks. However, upon closer inspection, one could see that there were centipede-like scars on the girl's face. It looked like some kind of vicious cursed mageweth. Not only her face, but her exposed arms and calves also had such scars. She looked exceptionally frightening. F***ck, you scared me. Where did this ugly girl come from? Scram. You smell dirty, get out of the way. Some of the surrounding sky prides revealed looks of disgust when they saw the ugly red-robed girl. The magic power in his body vibrated and shook the girl away. The young girl was sent flying, and in the end, she fell beside Fairy Yu Dai. After all, there was only a small empty space beside her. It hurts. The young girl was wailing. The hideous centipede-like scars on her face and body were wriggling as if they were alive. Blurg, the young girl couldn't help but vomit, and some of the salted meat splashed onto Fairy Yu Dai's skirt. Dead silence, the surrounding sky prides were all stunned. The young girl actually vomited on Fairy Yu Dai's skirt. Fairy Yu Dai's expression froze for a moment before turning cold. In order to attract Jun Xiaoyao's attention, She deliberately dressed up exquisitely and elegantly. In the end, this dirty ugly girl actually vomited on her. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose." The young girl curled up and endured the pain. Her voice was trembling. In a place as strict as the foreign realm, this was definitely an offense that courted death. Fairy Yu Dai's magic power shook and removed the filth, but her expression became even colder. There was a loud bang. The young girl was sent flying and vomited blood. The surrounding sky prides acted as if they were watching a show. There was not even a hint of pity in their eyes. In their eyes, this kind of young girl beggar was even more lowly than slaves. Even crushing her to death would be too dirty. That ugly girl should be dead, right? Fairy Yu Dai's cultivation base is a sage king. That girl is probably dead after her attack. Some gazes fell. However, to everyone's surprise, the red-robed girl's body trembled and struggled to get up from the ground. Her body was covered in blood, filth, and dust. She was filthy and in a sorry state. It was extremely disgusting. "She's not dead." The group of people was astonished. Fairy Yu Dai was a sage king. A casual shake of her magic power was enough to kill this young girl beggar millions of times. But she was still alive. Fairy Yu Dai was also surprised. Her beautiful face was as cold as ice. A casual attack couldn't even kill a beggar. This was a blow to her reputation. Fairy Yu Dai walked slightly closer to the red-robed girl and frowned. She covered her nose with her hand and said coldly, "You're still alive after taking a blow from me. Are you also here to be a follower?" Hongi wants to pay respects to that Lord Chaotic body." The girl named Su Hongi endured the pain and said weakly with blood flowing from the corner of her mouth. Although she was just a wandering child beggar, she had heard many people talk about Jun Xiaoyao. He swept through all the heavenly kings by himself. Even the young masters of the emperor race were afraid of him. Su Hongi yearned for that kind of peerless charm. Therefore, after learning that the Heaven's Chosen meeting had begun, she also wandered all the way here. As long as she could see Jun Xiaoyao from afar and admire his charm, she would be satisfied. What? Admire the chaotic body? Haha, I'm dying of laughter. A lowly beggar wants to admire the glory of a quasi-war god. That's right, it's ridiculous. Hearing this, the group of people burst into laughter. They looked at Su Hongi as if she was a clown. The corners of Fairy Yu Dai's lips curled up slightly with a hint of cold mockery. The glory of Lord Chaotic Body is not something a lowly beggar like you has the right to admire. Only I have the right to follow the Chaotic Body and follow by his side. Fairy Yu Dai stretched out her slender jade-like fingers. Dharmic power gathered between her fingers and directly pierced through Su Hongi's forehead. No one pitied her. No one pitied her. Even his gaze was cold and indifferent as if he was watching a show. This was the iron and blood law of the foreign realm. The survival of the fittest. Su Hongi felt tired. Her entire body was tortured by pain. Perhaps dying like this wasn't a bad thing. However, whoosh. A ray of dharmic power broke through the air and blocked Fairy Yu Dai's attack. Who is it? Fairy Yu Dai frowned. She swept her gaze over, and her beautiful face instantly froze. Her heart raced. In the distance, several figures stepped through the air. Tushan Wanwan, Tushan Chun Chun, and Fei Qingxue were all there. They were not here to recruit followers, but to follow Jun Xiaoyao to watch the show. In the lead was Jun Xiaoyao. His white robe was whiter than snow as he floated in the air. Immortal aura overflowed, otherworldly. There seemed to be mist flowing on his face, but one could still vaguely see his pillously handsome face. Chaotic light flowed in his eyes. It was incomparably deep, as if he could see through everything. He looked at the dirty red-clothed girl with a hint of surprise in his eyes. It's that strange feeling again. Could it be that she is also? Chapter 952. It was the first time that many of the prodigies in the square had seen Jun Xiaoyao. They all held their breaths at the same time. It was as if they had seen a true immortal appear and walk among the mortals. Greetings, quasi-god of war. Countless prodigies in the square cupped their fists at Jun Xiaoyao in unison. Their voices were monstrous. The god of war was the supreme glory that everyone in the younger generation of the foreign territory pursued. And the quasi-god of war was only one step away from that supreme glory. It could be seen that Zhang Xiaoyao's reputation and status in the foreign territory were even higher than some of the princes and princesses. Not to mention that he had the unparalleled chaotic physique. Countless people wanted to curry favor with Zhang Xiaoyao. Even a drop of Zhang Xiaoyao's blood would be a priceless treasure. Yu Xiaoyao, when Li Jiuyi and the others saw Zhang Xiaoyao's arrival, their faces were a little embarrassed. What made them even more annoyed was that Zhang Xiaoyao acted as if he did not see them. He did not even look over. What did that mean? As far as Zhang Xiaoyao was concerned, those who had lost to him were no longer worthy of his attention. Sir, I am from the cursed demon clan and have the cursed spirit physique. I hope to become your follower. A man with runes all over his body bowed to Zhang Xiaoyao with a nervous look on his face. Sir, I am from the Ghost Eye Royal Clan. I am willing to become your follower. Sir, I am from the Purple Feather Clan. My name is Zi Lin. As long as you take me in, I will not complain even if I become your servant. Sir, the surroundings suddenly became noisy. Countless prodigies scrambled to introduce themselves, hoping to gain Zhang Xiaoyao's favor. Even if it was just following the chaotic physique, it would be a great opportunity. Zhang Xiaoyao frowned slightly, raised his palm, and pressed it down. In an instant, the square was silent. Such an aura and ability to control the situation made Li Jiuyi frown deeply. Did Zhang Xiaoyao already have such prestige among the younger generation? Even those princes and princesses only had such prestige. Amidst the silence of the crowd, Fairy Yu Dai twisted her delicate waist and stepped forward. Her beautiful face carried an enchanting and confident smile as she spoke in a gentle voice. My lord, I'm from the Quasi-Emperor clan, the Blue Moon clan. My name is Yu Dai. Because I admire your grace, I want to become your follower. I wonder if you can give Yu Dai this opportunity. Fairy Yu Dai said as she bowed to Zhang Xiaoyao. When she bent down, her snow-white cleavage was particularly eye-catching. However, Fairy Yu Dai's expression froze. Zhang Xiaoyao's gaze swept over her indifferently before landing on the dirty red-clothed girl at the side. The difference between these two women was like heaven and earth. Fairy Yu Dai's expression changed. She thought that Zhang Xiaoyao was offended by this filthy young woman. She turned her head and coldly rebuked, "Why aren't you scramming? Yu Dai doesn't want to fight in front of Milord. She's afraid of dirtying Milord's eyes." Su Hongyi endured the pain. Her eyes, which were covered by her messy hair, looked at Zhang Xiaoyao. In her eyes was a figure like an immortal. It was too beautiful. It was so beautiful that Su Hongyi felt a little unreal. Su Hongyi, greet my lord. I will leave now. Su Hongyi kowtowed to Zhang Xiaoyao and turned to leave. She hated herself and did not want to tarnish that peerless and aloof young master. Wait, a faint voice sounded. Su Hongyi was stunned. Fairy Yu Dai was stunned. All the Sky Prides were dumbfounded. Zhang Xiaoyao walked in front of Su Hongyi and looked at her carefully. Then, he reached out his hand and lifted Su Hongyi's messy hair. Suddenly, a pair of blood-red eyes looked at Zhang Xiaoyao. Those red eyes seemed to be condensed from blood, and there were small black runes in them. It looked strange and seductive. However, the girl's face was full of hideous and twisted scars that seemed to be wriggling like centipedes. It looked disgusting and nauseating. It somewhat destroyed this beautiful and strange feeling. My lord, don't look at me. I'm ugly. Su Hongyi was about to cry and wanted to cover her face with her hands. Fairy Yu Dai bit her lips and said, "My lord, that girl is very dirty." Su Hongyi's body was dirty and messy. Filth, blood, and dust mixed together. It was disgusting to look at. Zhang Xiaoyao, on the other hand, looked extremely calm. Of course, he wasn't being merciful and pitying the beggar. Instead, it was because he had sensed a strange fluctuation. There is an extremely strong curse power in this girl's body. Her meridians are twisted and her bones are cracked. It is a miracle that she can live until now. Zhang Xiaoyao thought to himself. If the curse power in Su Hongyi's body was on Fairy Yu Dai, Its strength was enough to kill Fairy Yu Dai directly. However, Su Hongyi had managed to survive and was still alive. Wasn't it obvious what this meant? Compared to Su Hongyi, Fairy Yu Dai was nothing. So what if she was a sage king? Jun Xiaoyaro was rather interested in these special people with strange backgrounds. His previous followers, Yi Yu, Yang Qingying, Wang Chuan, and Goddess Eternal Calamity. Which one of them did not have their own unique characteristics? Jun Xiaoyao's followers had never been mediocre people. Originally, Jun Xiaoyao had only come to participate in this chosen one gathering for Prince Nirvana and Shen Yu. He had no intention of taking in any followers at all. But now, he had picked up a loophole and met someone who interested him. My lord, Su Hongyi's body trembled like a quail. She smelled the stench on her body and felt ashamed. She felt that staying by Jun Xiaoyao's side was a kind of stain to Jun Xiaoyao. What is your name? Jun Xiaoyao asked. Su Hongyi. Su Hongyi felt flattered. Her only wish before was to catch a glimpse of Jun Xiaoyao from afar. Who would have thought that she would be able to talk to Jun Xiaoyao? And Jun Xiaoyao even gently lifted her forehead hair and looked into her eyes. Jun Xiaoyao was not as cold and arrogant as Su Hongyi thought him to be. Su Hongyi. Jun Xiaoyao murmured. She was indeed like her name. She was dressed in red, but it was a little dirty and shabby. Then, Jun Xiaoyao suddenly pointed at Su Hongyi's forehead. A force was transmitted into Su Hongyi's body. He wanted to temporarily suppress the curse power in Su Hongyi's body. Su Hongyi felt a vast amount of energy enter her body. The pain receded like the tide. The hideous scars on her body also faded a little. Of course, they were still there. Thank you, my lord. Su Hongyi's red eyes trembled and she was extremely grateful. Everyone looked at her with disdain. Everyone treated her as a dirty bug in the saw. Except for Jun Xiaoyao. His status was so high that Su Hongyi did not even dare to think about it. He had helped her. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyao's figure was forever engraved in Su Hongyi's heart. The rarest thing was not icing on the cake, but providing timely help. My lord, she is just a wild girl with no background and is even lower than the slave race. How can she be taken care of by my lord? Fairy Yu Dai was a little confused. She was a genius of a quasi-emperor clan, but she was not as attractive as a lowly wild girl. Jun Xiaoyao ignored Fairy Yu Dai and looked at Su Hongyi and slowly pointed. A drop of chaos blood was forced out from his fingertip. I will give you two choices. First, accept this drop of blood and kill her. Then you can become my follower. Second, leave immediately. I will not let anyone find trouble with you. Chapter 953. Jun Xiaoyao's voice was very calm, but it was heard all over the square. At that instant, the geniuses on the square were dumbfounded, causing them to inhale deeply. Did I hear that right? Master Chaotic Flesh wants that girl to kill Fairy Yu Dai. How is that possible? That drop of blood is the blood of chaos. Even if it's the blood of chaos, it's impossible. Can that girl take it? After a brief moment of deathly silence, an earth-shattering uproar erupted. Countless gazes landed on Jun Xiaoyao. To be precise, they were looking at the drop of blood on Jun Xiaoyao's finger. The blood of chaos. A drop of blood was enough to create a peerless genius. It was definitely not a lie. The geniuses present were even willing to fight to the death for a drop of blood. Goddess Yu Dai felt as if her mind had been struck by lightning when she heard what Jun Xiaoyao said. Jun Xiaoyao wanted that girl to kill her. Did he think she was too weak? Or was he testing her determination? Yu Dai sincerely wants to follow Master and is willing to devote herself to him. Yu Dai is not weak, and I live a good life. Master will definitely be satisfied. Fairy Yu Dai's face was slightly pale. She no longer cared about her honor and wanted to follow Jun Xiaoyao. However, Jun Xiaoyao did not pay any attention to him and looked at Su Hongyi instead. What's your choice? Jun Xiaoyao asked. He had temporarily suppressed the curse power in Su Hongyi's body with the chaotic force. If he also gave her the drop of blood of chaos to repair her bones and veins, unlocking the potential in her body, it should be a pleasant surprise. Besides, this girl's background was a mystery, but she was still qualified to become Jun Xiaoyao's follower. Of course, it was fine if Su Hongyi was unwilling. Then, Jun Xiaoyao would also find out the secret behind her. However, he would not be so kind to her. Su Hongyi's heart was beating rapidly. Even her breathing seemed to have stopped. She knew that she might have come to the most important turning point in her life. Whether her fate would change or not depended on her choice. Lowly girl, you better know your place. Fairy Yu Dai was a little embarrassed and angry. She found it hard to control her temper. What kind of status did she have? How could this lowly girl be more favored than her? Fairy Yu Dai couldn't figure it out. He could not figure it out at all. Red coat is willing. Su Hongyi's crimson eyes that were like seas of blood flashed with a cold killing intent. It was a monstrous hatred for his own tragic fate. Su Hongyi opened her mouth and stuck out her tongue, sucking Jun Xiaoyao's finger. It was sucking. It looked like a pet trying to please its master. The drop of chaos blood was sucked into Su Hongyi's body, and it began to spread. Unparalleled primal chaos energy was surging. If an ordinary person were to receive this power, they would definitely explode instantly. Even a sage king would find it difficult to swallow and refine it directly. This drop of blood needed to be diluted and refined into a medicinal pill before it could be refined and consumed. But Su Hongyi was different. She was able to withstand such a strong curse. Not to mention this drop of chaos blood. Under everyone's horrified gazes, Su Hongyi's aura was rising steadily. Void God, Heavenly God, True God, Tao God, Sage to be, Sage. Su Hongyi had directly become a sage. Countless geniuses were so shocked that their scalps went numb, and their eyeballs almost slipped out of their sockets. A moment ago, she was still a dirty and lowly girl beggar. The next moment, she became a sage. Even with the chaos blood, it was too ridiculous. Only Jun Xiaoyao knew. Su Hongyi had a powerful force hidden in her body, but it was suppressed by the curse. This drop of chaos blood had only drawn out a very small portion of its power. And it was this small portion of power that allowed Su Hongyi to directly break through to the sage stage. The chaos body's eyesight is too sharp. He can even see through this. But that girl is only at the sage stage now. It's impossible for her to defeat Fairy Yu Dai. Many people were surprised by Jun Xiaoyao's eyesight. Fairy Yu Dai was also extremely shocked. Her beautiful face began to contort. Resentment and jealousy surged in her beautiful eyes. It's all because of this bitch. If she hadn't appeared, Jun Xiaoyao would definitely have taken a fancy to her and made her his follower. Su Hongyi had taken away her achievement. My lord, please wait a moment. Su Hongyi reluctantly let go of her mouth. When she turned to Fairy Yu Dai, her red eyes had been replaced by blood and coldness. Everything in this world was making her suffer. Only Jun Xiaoyao was willing to save her. Since she had promised Jun Xiaoyao and swallowed the chaos blood, she naturally had to kill Fairy Yu Dai. Su Hongyi attacked. Her aura erupted. Behind him, a very faint shadow appeared. It was very blurry, and it was impossible to see what it was. At this moment, her aura was like that of a red-clothed demon with a terrifying murderous and dark aura. At the same time that Su Hongyi's aura erupted. In the vast 10 provinces of the foreign realm. In the forbidden areas of some immortal emperors, some of the important figures exclaimed in surprise. That aura, could it be that person? As expected, his awakened again. That person's obsession is simply too deep. The cycle of reincarnation never stops. Looks like a great change is about to happen in our realm. I wonder if that person will bring disaster or fate. Recently, the signs of the 6 kings of destruction awakening have appeared. Looks like a great change is about to happen in our realm. Perhaps an unprecedented king of darkness will appear, bringing an end to the celestial region, on the square. No one had expected Su Hongyi's aura to attract the attention of those important figures. They were all nervously watching the situation. Su Hongyi instinctively reached out her hand, and a flickering dark murderous light condensed in her palm. Dark sky slaughter. It only took an instant. Su Hongyi's red eyes shot out 3 feet of murderous light. She was like a red demonic flame that instantly swept past Fairy Yu Dai. The atmosphere froze. Time paused. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. No, I'm the pride of a boundary emperor race. How is this possible? Fairy Yu Dai's face turned pale in disbelief. A line of blood appeared on her swan-like neck. Then, there was a puff. Her delicate body exploded, and so did her primordial spirit. A boundary emperor race's pride of a saint king had fallen. The whole place was silent, and only the sound of countless people swallowing their saliva could be heard. A saint had killed a saint king in one move. If it was someone from an emperor race, it would be acceptable. But now, it was a young beggar girl who had killed a boundary emperor race's pride. This was too unreal, like a dream. No one could recover from their shock. My lord. After killing Fairy Yu Dai in one move, Su Hongyi landed in front of Jun Xiaoyao. She was nervous, expectant, and a little nervous. She looked like a puppy wagging its tail, waiting for its owner to praise it. At this moment, she no longer had the aura of a demon queen like when she killed Fairy Yu Dai. Not bad, you can become my follower. Jun Xiaoyao nodded slightly. This performance was passable. It could be considered a pass. If Su Hongyi had needed 2 moves to kill Fairy Yu Dai, Jun Xiaoyao would suspect that there was something wrong with his eyes. Thank you, young master. I, Su Hongyi, swear to the heavens that I will only belong to you in this life. Everything, my body, and even my soul, belongs to you, my lord. Su Hongyi directly knelt in front of Jun Xiaoyao and kowtowed heavily. It was Jun Xiaoyao who had given her a new life. Everyone despised her, and insulted her. Jun Xiaoyao was the only one who extended his hand to her. This kindness would be engraved in Su Hongyi's heart forever. Jun Xiaoyao nodded in satisfaction. He knew that there was definitely a big secret behind Su Hongyi. He had only used a drop of chaos blood, and he had obtained a future peerless demon queen for free. Chapter 954. Jun Xiaoyao was very strict. Those who had the qualifications to become his followers naturally had something special about them that surpassed ordinary people. At this point, Jun Xiaoyao had a total of 5 followers. Yi Yu, Yang Qingying, Wang Chuan, Goddess Eternal Calamity, and Su Hongyi. Looking at Su Hongyi, who was kneeling in front of him, Jun Xiaoyao said, "Get up." Yes. Su Hongyi got up. Although her body was still dirty and her red dress was tattered, the strange scars on her face and body had not completely disappeared. But her temperament was as cold as the wind, and the coldness that killed Fairy Yu Dai in seconds. This caused all the geniuses present to shut their mouths. They no longer dared to underestimate this filthy young lady. Sensing the fear in the eyes of the people around, Su Hongyi had mixed feelings. From being despised by everyone to being feared by everyone, Jun Xiaoyao had given her an unprecedented new life. Even if Jun Xiaoyao did not plant a slave mark on Su Hongyi would still be loyal to Jun Xiaoyao. The atmosphere was a little tense. After all, a quasi-emperor genius had died tragically on the spot. If it was anyone else, the Blue Moon clan would definitely not let them go. But if it was Jun Xiaoyao, the Blue Moon clan would definitely not make things difficult for Jun Xiaoyao just because of Fairy Yu Dai. After all, Jun Xiaoyao was no longer a loner at the moment. He had the ancient supreme of the academy behind him. At this moment, a light and leisurely voice sounded. TSK, 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 seeing is believing. Rumor has it that the chaotic physique is unparalleled. Now that I've seen it, it's indeed true. A quasi-emperor genius was killed with a casual order. Hearing this voice, everyone turned to look. "He's here," Li Jiuming said. In the distance, a handsome young man in blue clothes and blue hair stepped on the air. Under his feet, blue hurricane lilies bloomed, turning into a bridge that extended over. The blue-clothed young man stepped on the blue parameter bridge and walked over slowly with a calm bearing. It's the Nirvana Prince of the blue spider lilies. Oh my God, this is the head of the 10 heavenly kings. The appearance of Prince Bian had undoubtedly stirred up a great commotion. Many people looked back and forth between Jun Xiaoyao and Prince Hagen. Even though the two of them didn't have any conflict with each other before, they were still very close to each other. However, when Jun Xiaoyaro was dealing with Li Jiuyi, he had said some derogatory words about the 10 heavenly kings. Don't let him think that the 10 heavenly kings are all weaklings. Of course, this included Prince Nirvana as well. And as everyone knew, Prince Nirvana had a perverse temperament. He was extremely arrogant and self-centered. Because they had the backing of the Nirvana Emperor clan, they were unbridled. His status was not much different from Li Jiuyi, a young master of an emperor clan. With Prince Bayan's personality, it was obvious that he was unhappy. You are the leader of the 10 heavenly kings? Jun Xiaoyaro also sized up Prince Hagen. His aura was indeed not weak. Xiaoyaro, chaotic jade body, 5 of the 10 heavenly kings have been defeated by you. This is really an eye-opener. Prince Bayan's tone was playful. He was not a brainless little villain who was furious. He just narrowed his eyes slightly with a touch of judgment and a cold light. He was guessing how strong Jun Xiaoyao's real strength was. I don't think so. I am too strong. Jun Xiaoyaro was also calm and leisurely. What he meant was that the 10 heavenly kings were too weak. Sigh, brother Xiaoyaro, you are too humble. You killed a supreme being as a quasi-supreme being and shocked the 10 prefectures. Prince Bayan smiled. It felt like a smiling tiger. Listening to the conversation between the two, the hundreds of thousands of sky prides were paying attention. There was no fierce conflict. Instead, it felt like there was a knife hidden in a smile. It felt like a needle was pointed at an all. So, do you want to give it a try? Jun Xiaoyaro said calmly. He wanted to use Prince Bayan as a breakthrough point to find clues about the Bayan clan. Today is the Chosen One pageant. I am mainly here to recruit followers, Prince Bayan said with a smile. Hearing this, many people secretly felt that it was a pity. There would be no exciting battle. Many people also thought that Prince Bayan was a little afraid of Jun Xiaoyaro. After all, he was a chaotic jade body who had killed a supreme being. If it were those sleeping princes and princesses, they would probably be very cautious. Jun Xiaoyaro narrowed his eyes slightly. He was waiting. In the following time, Prince Bayan also selected a few followers. Their talent, strength, and background were not weak. They were not much worse than Fairy Yu Dai. Of course, they could not be compared to Su Hongyi. Su Hongyi was buried in the sand, and Jun Xiaoyaro had unearthed it. Many other sky prides also wanted to follow Jun Xiaoyaro. However, Jun Xiaoyaro ignored all of them and did not pick any more followers. After selecting his followers, Prince Bayan glanced at them and said, "You should know what I hate the most, and that is betrayal. We will be loyal to you, my lord." These followers all cupped their hands and said, "Very well, but next, I will let you know what the consequences of betrayal are. It's not just you. Everyone here should know what the consequences of betraying a race and betraying our world are." As Prince Bayan's voice fell, there was a rumbling sound in the distant sky. 9 skeletal vultures pulled a prison cart over. In the prison cart, there was a girl whose clothes were stained with blood. The girl's figure was slender, and her pitch-black hair was like a waterfall. She wore a ghost mask on her face. Her limbs were thin and wrapped in blood-stained bandages. She looked very weak, as if she had been severely injured and tortured. Jun Xiaoyaro glanced over. It was Xian Yu. That person is. Whispers could be heard in the square. She is a member of the Bayan organization under the command of the Bayan Emperor family. However, she betrayed her own race, betrayed our world. In the world of divine ruins, she stood up for the son of God of the Jun family of the immortal realm. The Bayan clan will not allow this kind of betrayal. Prince Bayan's voice spread between heaven and earth. He had already made up his mind to torture Xian Yu to death in front of everyone after capturing her. Firstly, he wanted to create an image of himself as a loyal and righteous person. Secondly, he wanted to establish the prestige of the blue spider lilies. Hearing Prince Bayan's words, all the sky prides of the foreign realm came back to their senses. Their eyes were filled with disdain. "Kill her. We will not tolerate anyone who betrays our realm." "That's right. This kind of traitor must be executed," many of the creatures of the foreign realm shouted. A traitor would not be welcomed anywhere. In the prison cart, under the ghost mask, Shen Yu's face was very calm. She did not have the slightest regret. She did not even care that she was about to be executed. The only thing she cared about was whether or not Jun Xiaoyaro had truly fallen. "Are you really dead?" Shen Yu murmured. Chapter 955. Shen Yu and Jun Xiaoyaro were enemies. But when Jun Xiaoyaro was in danger, Shen Yu couldn't just stand by and watch. Maybe it was because she had made a mistake once. She killed her brother with her own hands. She didn't want to make the same mistake again. Even if Shen Yu was despised by everyone, she didn't care at all. Because to her, other than the important people, everything else in the world was nothing. "Shen Yu, have you ever regretted it?" Prince Bayan asked indifferently. Shen Yu didn't say anything. Her heart had already died when she killed her brother with her own hands. But when she met Jun Xiaoyaro, her dead heart started beating again. Then, Jun Xiaoyao's life was unknown. It was almost equivalent to death. "Shen Yu couldn't find a reason to live anymore. It seems that you don't repent. Today, I'll kill you in front of everyone, you traitor," Prince Bayan said indifferently. Sai, a pitiful girl, joined the organization because of a lie. She persevered until now, but in the end, she still died. In the void, a beautiful woman wearing a ghost mask appeared. She was the leader of the Bayan organization, Hua Lian. She was the one who persuaded Shen Yu to join the Bayan organization. The reason was that she could help her brother find a way to reincarnate. But let's not talk about whether the Bayan Emperor could do it. Even if they could, the price they had to pay was obviously not small. How could the Bayan Emperor pay such a high price for Shen Yu's dead brother? So, it was a lie from the beginning. Hua Lian just gave Shen Yu a beautiful fantasy. The heavenly lady hasn't woken up yet. "I wonder how she will view Shen Yu," Hua Lian murmured. It was the heavenly lady of the Bayan Emperor clan, Meng Nu, who guided her to find Shen Yu. Perhaps Shen Yu would be an important person. But now, the Bayan Emperor clan hadn't shown up yet, and Meng Nu hadn't woken up yet. The blue flower of the Bayan Emperor clan was in charge. Prince Bayan said that he wanted to kill Shen Yu, and Hua Lian was helpless. She didn't want Shen Yu to die like this. There were chains attached to Shen Yu's body as she was pulled out of the prison carriage. An executioner holding a bone-scraping knife revealed a cruel smile as he prepared to dismember Shen Yu. None of the Sky Prides avoided the topic. There was even a hint of curiosity and excitement in the eyes of many people. Just as everyone was waiting with their eyes wide open to see Shen Yu being executed, a calm voice suddenly appeared. "Hold on." As his voice rang out, the world fell silent. Prince Bayan squinted his eyes and looked towards the source of the voice. Everyone revealed a trace of astonishment. As for Shen Yu, her delicate body trembled when she heard this voice. The gaze under the ghost mask looked at the person who came. Dressed in white, he stood tall and straight, looking handsome and meaningful. "It's him." Shen Yu's eyes were trembling. They were clearly very similar. However, that aura was completely different. Primal chaos energy pervaded the air, shrouding everything in mist. That aura did not belong to him. Mystic Moon was confused. She thought that she was hallucinating. "Young Master Xiaoyao, is there anything I can help you with?" Prince Bayan said calmly. "Xiaoyao." Shen Yu's eyes trembled silently. The others would not associate Xiaoyao with Jun Xiaoyaro of the mystic realm just because of Xiaoyao. However, Shen Yu was someone who had fought with Jun Xiaoyaro. She had even fallen into the immortal region with Jun Xiaoyaro through the void abyss. Shen Yu's dead heart began to thump. She did not know why, but she was not willing to die like this. Of course, Shen Yu was also very smart. She remained silent and would not take the initiative to ask for help. "This person is a little interesting." Jun Xiaoyaro glanced at Shen Yu and said, "Oh, she's just a traitor. How could she catch the attention of the chaotic body?" Prince Bayan smiled. There was a hint of playfulness in his tone. Could it be that the chaotic body had taken a liking to Shen Yu's beauty? However, after thinking about it, Prince Bayan secretly shook his head. Even someone like Fairy Yu Dai could be killed by Jun Xiaoyaro without batting an eyelid. He was not a person who was greedy for beauty. She was a spy in the immortal region. I'm quite interested in all kinds of information about the immortal region. Jun Xiaoyaro did not mind the playfulness in Prince Bayan's tone and said calmly. Haha, really? Prince Bayan's eyes were deep. Their gazes collided in the void. Each had their own thoughts. The hundreds of thousands of skyprides in the square were a little surprised. Why would the chaotic body save a traitor? Probably to gather information about the immortal region? I wonder if Prince Bayan will give her face. Many discussions broke out. Hua Lian's gaze also fell on Jun Xiaoyaro. A hint of surprise appeared in her eyes instinctively, and then she revealed a pondering look. Is this the chaotic body that has recently become famous in the 10 continents? He killed a supreme being and is not inferior to the fairy. If he can save Xian Yu, it will save us a lot of trouble, Hua Lian thought to herself. In fact, she and the entire Bayan organization were directly under the fairy of the Bayan, Meng Nu. It was only because Meng Nu was in hibernation that the blue flower of the Bayan took the opportunity to seize control. Hua Lian was also not very fond of Prince Bayan He. How can I not agree to the chaotic body's request? After all, she is the quasi-god of war of the academy. But, Prince Bayan changed the topic and said, I'm not very satisfied with how you insulted the 10 heavenly kings. If you can apologize in front of everyone, I'll let you deal with Xian Yu. How about it? Prince Bayan said with a smile. He wanted to execute Xian Yu in front of everyone just to establish his prestige. But now, if he could make the chaotic body apologize to him, wouldn't that be 1,000 times better than establishing his prestige? Prince Bayan asked himself, and he did not think that the condition he proposed was too much. He did not want to force Jun Xiaoyaro to kneel down, nor did he want to humiliate him. It was just an apology. To Jun Xiaoyaro, it should not be a big deal. But it could increase his prestige. All the sky prides were waiting. Although it was just an apology. But after all, it was in front of hundreds of thousands of sky prides. He misjudged this step. Li Jiuming frowned. He felt that Prince Bayan had misjudged Jun Xiaoyao's character. Beside Jun Xiaoyao, Su Hongyi's red eyes flashed with scarlet murderous intent. If the emperor was sad, the minister would be humiliated. As Jun Xiaoyao's follower, Su Hongyi would naturally have murderous intent when Jun Xiaoyaro was provoked. Jun Xiaoyaro waved his hand and stopped Su Hongyi. Although she was not weak, she was not Prince Bayan's opponent for the time being. Jun Xiaoyaro looked up and glanced at Prince Bayan. He suddenly smiled. Prince Bayan, I think you have misunderstood something from the beginning, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Oh, what? Prince Bayan slowly narrowed his eyes. I never meant to ask for anything. As soon as Jun Xiaoyaro finished speaking, he took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Prince Bayan as if he was shuttling through the void. His speed was so fast that it was as if he was shuttling through the chaos. Then, smack. A loud slap was thrown at Prince Bayan, sending him flying. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his neck was almost broken. How dare you make conditions in front of me? Chapter 956. Dead silence. Absolute dead silence. Between heaven and earth, the loud sound of the slap was still reverberating. Prince Nirvana was sent flying by the slap. He landed heavily on the ground, creating a deep pit. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand and grabbed. The executioner who was about to execute Prince Nirvana was blasted into a bloody pulp by the chaotic pressure. The prison wagon was shattered. Xian Yu was captured by Jun Xiaoyaro. The whole place was silent. Everyone looked at Jun Xiaoyaro as if they were looking at a supreme king, powerful, domineering, swift and fierce. There was no doubt about it. Just like a monarch sitting high in the clouds, no one could go against his will. Even the leader of the 10 heavenly kings, Prince Nirvana, who had the Nirvana Emperor family behind him, was sent flying by Jun Xiaoyaro with a slap. Although Jun Xiaoyao's sudden attack was one of the reasons. But it also showed that Jun Xiaoyao's strength was not just for show. You Xiaoyao, how dare you sneak attack me? Prince Nirvana got out of the deep pit. His face was distorted due to anger, and his eyes were shooting flames. All his disguises were destroyed by Jun Xiaoyaro with a slap. Provocation? Hidden needles in his words. A smiling tiger. None of them mattered. A slap to wake you up. Simple and direct. Jun Xiaoyaro was too lazy to fight with such a person. Because he was not worthy. If it wasn't because Jun Xiaoyaro wanted to use Prince Nirvana as a clue to search for the Nirvana Emperor family, Jun Xiaoyaro would definitely slap Prince Nirvana to death. If I want something, it's mine. Remember that. Jun Xiaoyaro said lightly and turned to leave. Prince Nirvana's eyes changed. He gritted his teeth and wanted to attack to regain his face. However, the attack that Jun Xiaoyaro had just unleashed had made him extremely wary. Although Jun Xiaoyaro attacked suddenly, Prince Nirvana could still feel the oppressive aura of a divine king. He was not an existence that could be easily dealt with. Chaotic body, Prince Bian clenched his fists tightly, but in the end, he did not make a move. The leader of the 10 heavenly kings, Prince Nirvana, was terrified. Even he can't do it. It seems like we can only wait for those princes to appear before we can suppress him. Li Jiuyi sighed inwardly. Jun Xiaoyao's strength had already surpassed the prodigies of the 10 heavenly kings. Perhaps only monstrous geniuses like the 7 young emperors could deal with it. The Chosen One gathering was over. However, the events that transpired during this period of time caused people to relish in talking about them. As expected of the primal chaos body. With just a drop of blood and some enlightenment, even a beggar can become a saint. Not only that, he even slapped Prince Bian's face. TSK, TSK. With Prince Bian's personality, he must be furious right now. How powerful. Not only is there a mysterious undying behind the chaos body, there's also the Luo King backing him. No one dares to offend him. However, I've heard that the princes and princesses of certain monarch clans are very interested in the chaotic body. I'm looking forward to the sparring between the chaotic physique and the sovereign princes. All kinds of news were circulating in the outside world. As for Jun Xiaoyaro, he had already returned to the Ars Academy with the girls. Mr. is so handsome and powerful, Tushan Chun said excitedly. Jun Xiaoyaro simply fit the image of a fearless prince of destiny in her heart. I think only people like the 7 young emperors can be Mr.'s opponent. Tushan Wanwan's beautiful eyes also revealed a look of respect. After this period of sparring with Jun Xiaoyaro, her strength had also skyrocketed. After that, Tushan Xiaoxiao, Tushan Chun, and Fei Qingxue retreated for the time being, knowing that Jun Xiaoyaro still had things to do. Hongyi, you also leave first. Change your clothes and take a bath. I'll look for you later, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Yes, Hongyi. Su Hongyi nodded. However, her heart skipped a beat. Did he want her to take a bath first? However, no matter what Jun Xiaoyaro did to her, Su Hongyi would gladly accept it. It was Jun Xiaoyaro who gave her a new life. Everything she had belonged to Jun Xiaoyaro. In the end, only Jun Xiaoyaro and Xian Yu were left in the pavilion. Jun Xiaoyaro waved one hand, and the chaotic mist surged and blocked the pavilion. At the same time, he performed the sky-stealing sun-swapping technique, and even the karma of this place was isolated. He ensured that no information would be leaked. After doing all this, Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Xian Yu. She had suffered a lot and suffered serious injuries. Her delicate arms and long legs were covered with all kinds of scars. Obviously, after returning to the foreign land, Xian Yu's life was not easy. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand and grabbed toward the void. The ghost mask on Xian Yu's face was immediately taken off. An exceptionally delicate face was revealed. Although her face was as pale as snow, it was exquisite and stunning. There was a blood tear mole at the corner of her eye, which made her already alluring face even more beautiful and moving. Although Xian Yu had a guess in her heart, she still did not dare to be 100% sure. The chaotic mist on Jun Xiaoyao's face dissipated. A handsome face like that of a celestial being was revealed. Xian Yu's heart suddenly twitched as if it was struck by lightning. It was indeed him. Although she had expected it, Xian Yu's heart was still surging with shock. In the world of the divine ruins, Jun Xiaoyao's body and primordial spirit were even destroyed in that desperate situation. But now, he was still alive. Not only that, his strength was beyond Xian Yu's imagination. If it was before, Xian Yu could still exchange a few blows with Jun Xiaoyaro in the ancient road of ultimate. But now, Xian Yu felt that as long as Jun Xiaoyaro was willing, he could kill her in one move. This was not because Xian Yu was weak, but because Jun Xiaoyaro was too strong. It's been a long time. I didn't expect you to still be alive, Jun Xiaoyaro said. His voice was calm, without any emotion. Xian Yu fell into the void abyss with him, and he did not expect to fall into the foreign land together. It could only be said that it was fate. Xian Yu still found it difficult to calm down. Looking at that familiar handsome face, her dead heart trembled. Don't look at me like that. I'm not your brother's substitute. Furthermore, there is a reason why I saved you. I won't change my opinion of you just because you took a blow for me. Jun Xiaoyao's tone was a little cold. I know, Xian Yu said. She had never expected Jun Xiaoyaro to change his opinion of her in the first place. After all, she had hurt someone Jun Xiaoyaro cared about very much. Even if she risked her life to take a blow, it was only because of the obsession in her heart. Now that you have become a traitor of the Parameter organization, do you still insist on letting the Parameter clan revive your brother? Jun Xiaoyaro said. Xian Yu had taken the initiative to tell him her story in the world of the divine ruins. She was willing to join the Parameter organization because she wanted to find a way to reincarnate her brother. Hearing this, Xian Yu suddenly smiled. That smile was a little sad, and there was a hint of self-mockery. Actually, I should have known long ago that I was just deceiving myself. My brother is already dead, and he is not a top expert who has the ability to reincarnate and live several lives. So, you have long given up hope. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows. Maybe, I just want to numb myself and find a reason to live. Xian Yu's smile was sad, and it made one feel sorry for her. Chapter 957. Xian Yu's life was very tragic. She even killed her only family member with her own hands. Although it was a misunderstanding, it was enough to make anyone break down mentally. And Xian Yu chose to join the Nirvana organization for an illusory hope. She had been through a lot. Especially after she met Jun Xiaoyaro. Xian Yu suddenly felt that she seemed to be trapped in an illusory obsession. She just wanted to find a reason to deceive herself. She looked at the face that resembled her brother but was much more handsome. Xian Yu even had an illusion. Perhaps it was her dead brother who arranged for her to meet Jun Xiaoyaro in the first place. Her brother, on the other hand, had completely disappeared. Now that you know that it is a lie, there is no reason for you to live. Do you want to die? Jun Xiaoyaro tilted his head slightly and looked at Xian Yu. The only reason that supported Xian Yu's survival was to revive her brother. But now, this reason was also gone. Would Xian Yu seek death? Xian Yu was silent. Xian Yu originally planned to do so. But now, after Jun Xiaoyaro saved her, she suddenly didn't want to die. I didn't save you to let you die, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Why? I hurt Jiang Xingyi and almost killed her. You should also want me to die, right? Xian Yu couldn't help but ask. She didn't know why. There was a trace of jealousy in her words. Yes, your life is easily taken by me, but I want you to live. And you also need to tell me about the Nirvana Emperor family. You are one of the key clues that connect to the Nirvana Emperor family. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't hide and directly told her the reason why he saved her. Is that so? Xian Yu's eyes were filled with bitterness. Maybe she didn't deserve to be loved and cared for. She could only be a cold and ruthless killer forever. Just as Xian Yu's eyes dimmed, Jun Xiaoyaro added at the end of the sentence. Of course, if you are obedient, I will protect you and let you stay by my side in the future. Xian Yu's gloomy and deathly still eyes suddenly brightened up. She raised her head slightly and looked at Jun Xiaoyaro, who had a calm expression on his face. She thought about this aloof man who seemed to be aloof and distant. He did not seem to be as indifferent and emotionless as he appeared. Xian Yu seemed to have found a new reason to continue living. This time, it wasn't because Jun Xiaoyaro resembled her brother. It was because of Jun Xiaoyaro himself. Looking at Xian Yu, a glimmer of light flashed in her eyes. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed inwardly. Sometimes, controlling people's hearts was just that simple. Attacking the mind was the best strategy. Mystic Moon originally had a mortal body, but because it devoured the myriad Taos and refined the myriad Taos, it rose to power. In the future, Xian Yu's talent would be unpredictable. She wasn't any weaker than the mysterious Su Hongyi. Xian Yu, Su Hongyi. These two women would be Zhun Xiaoyao's sharpest blade. Zhun Xiaoyao said, "Your injuries are quite serious. You should stay in the academy to recuperate first. I'll look for you when I need you later." Thank you. Xian Yu seemed to have never said thank you before. She seemed a little awkward. "By the way, this is for you." Zhun Xiaoyao stretched out his finger, and a drop of chaos essence blood appeared. This. Xian Yu was a little surprised. Zhun Xiaoyao had given her a drop of chaos essence blood. Xian Yu had always walked the path of refining the myriad of bloodline talents. This drop of chaos essence blood was invaluable to her. Although she didn't know how Zhun Xiaoyao had changed from the sacred body of the ancients to the body of chaos. But obviously, Zhun Xiaoyao's gift was too valuable. Not only did he save her life, but he also gave her the chaos essence blood. Xian Yu owed Zhun Xiaoyao a huge favor. "This, I will remember." Xian Yu accepted the chaos essence blood. Her gaze was very complicated, and then she left. Looking at Xian Yu's back as she left, Zhun Xiaoyao smiled. "There's no free lunch in the world. Since you accepted my gift, you'll have to pay me back double." Zhun Xiaoyao was never one to make a losing deal. The war at the border was about to start, so Zhun Xiaoyao wouldn't go to the Nirvana Emperor clan for the time being. After he returned from the border and Xian Yu's injuries had healed, he could go to the Nirvana Emperor clan to investigate. Then, Zhun Xiaoyao's divine consciousness moved. Outside the door, Su Hongyi walked in and bowed respectfully to Zhun Xiaoyao. Su Hongyi had already taken a bath and washed away the dirt. She had changed into a new red dress. Her forehead hair was still very long, and it slightly covered her strange blood-red eyes. She had a fair and pretty face. Although it wasn't the extreme kind of beauty, she was like a neighborhood girl. However, she was just like the girl next door, very beautiful and exquisite. However, the twisted and hideous scars that resembled centipedes destroyed this beauty. "Master." Su Hongyi was very respectful. She even used her small hands to tug at her wrinkled red dress. When she killed Fairy Yu Dai, she was like a cold-blooded red-clothed demon queen. But in front of Zhun Xiaoyao, she was like a nervous girl next door. Zhun Xiaoyao smiled and said, "Don't be nervous. Since you've become my follower, you're one of my people. No one will dare to hurt you in the future." Su Hongyi said weakly, "Yes, I'll always be one of your people, as long as you don't mind. You're a follower that I've personally taken in. Why would I despise you?" Zhun Xiaoyao found it funny. Su Hongyi lowered her head slightly and said, "After all, there are great beauties around you. I'm ugly." Su Hongyi's voice became weaker and weaker. Indeed, Tushan Xiaoxiao, Tushan Chun and Luo Xiangling were all great beauties around Zhun Xiaoyao. Even Fei Qingxue, who had a lower status, was beautiful. Su Hongyi was the only exception. Although she had a good foundation, she was a beauty in the making. But the scars ruined her appearance. Su Hongyi was already used to it. However, she couldn't help but feel a sense of inferiority when she was with a man like Zhun Xiaoyao. Hearing this, Zhun Xiaoyao said, "By the way, I still don't know your background. Maybe I can think of a way." "Really?" Su Hongyi's body trembled and she couldn't help but blurt out. Then, her face turned red and she realized that she had lost her composure. Following this, Su Hongyi told Qin Nan everything that had happened without holding anything back. Su Hongyi had no parents since she was young, and no one knew where she came from. She was raised by a couple from a slave clan. After that, this slave race was exterminated. Su Hongyi was lucky enough to escape with her life. After that, he began to wander around all by himself. Logically speaking, a girl like Su Hongyi would have a hard time surviving in a place like the Outer Realm. However, she still had to thank the scars on her body, which made everyone stay away from her and treat her as an ugly person who had been tainted with bad luck. "I see." Zhun Xiaoyao nodded slightly. It seemed that Su Hongyi didn't know her background. In this way, There was only one way for Jun Xiaoyaro to confirm his thoughts. Hongi, take off your clothes. Chapter 958. Yes. Ah. Su Hongi replied instinctively. Then, a look of surprise appeared in her eyes. Could it be that it was really as she thought? Let me wash myself clean first, and then, of course, Su Hongi did not hesitate. Everything she had was given to her by Jun Xiaoyaro. Without Jun Xiaoyaro, she might not even be alive. In just a moment, Su Hongi took off her red dress in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. After washing herself clean, her delicate body was like a freshly peeled chestnut. Her skin was fair and tender, as smooth as cream. Although there were many hideous scars that looked like centipedes, they were still very powerful. Against her delicate body, there was a strange and seductive feeling. Su Hongi's face was red. She lowered her head, not daring to look at Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes revealed a look of realization. On Su Hongi's snow-white abdomen, below her navel, there was a blurry mark that looked like a six-point star. Upon closer inspection, it was somewhat similar to the dark six-point star mark that appeared on Jun Xiaoyao's wrist. However, it looked very blurry, as if it had yet to awaken. Young master, sensing Jun Xiaoyao's gaze, Su Hongi's delicate body trembled slightly. It was not because of fear, but because of shyness. It seems like it's really as I expected, but it doesn't seem to have truly awakened, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. After arriving at the Ars Academy, Jun Xiaoyaro had also looked up some information about the 6 Annihilation Kings. In the past, the 6 Annihilation Kings had never all appeared. Perhaps 1 or 2 kings would awaken in an era. However, even if 1 or 2 kings awakened, they would still pose a huge threat to the mystic region if they grew up. For example, it was rumored that the Annihilation Kings had contributed to the destruction of a corner of the border. Jun Xiaoyaro had killed that demon-like man in the heavenly tomb, and the 6-point star mark had been transferred to Jun Xiaoyao's body. Jun Xiaoyaro guessed that the so-called 6 Annihilation Kings should be something similar to destiny. Whoever was stronger would have the right to fight for it, and it wasn't fixed. For example, when Jun Xiaoyaro killed that demon-like man, the fate of the end of the world was transferred to him. The only thing that Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't sure about was, why was Su Hongi able to obtain the heavenly mandate of the 6 Annihilation Kings? What should he do to awaken this world-destroying destiny? Where did Su Hongi's terrifying curse power come from? Why was she implanted with such a curse? Jun Xiaoyaro had new doubts in his heart. However, this matter could not be rushed. Figuring out Su Hongi's secret was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Besides, Jun Xiaoyaro was confident. Regardless of whether or not Su Hongi would awaken the mandate of destruction and become a true Red Demon Queen in the future, Su Hongi would still be able to do so. However, she was absolutely loyal to him. Jun Xiaoyaro had taken in a Doomsday King as his follower. What Jun Xiaoyaro needed to do next was to make Su Hongi follow him wholeheartedly. She could even give up her life for Jun Xiaoyaro. Although he could also control Su Hongi by implanting a slave mark. However, for Jun Xiaoyaro, this kind of forceful control was the worst method. Jun Xiaoyaro naturally had his own way. Hongi, your body is very beautiful. You don't have to feel so inferior. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled slightly. Su Hongi's blood-red eyes trembled slightly. Young master, you must be joking. How can such an ugly body catch your eye? Su Hongi felt disgusted when she saw the twisted scars on her body. This should be an extremely strong curse power. It's not impossible to suppress it, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Young master, is it really possible? Su Hongi's eyes were trembling. Although she had been through it for so many years. She was also used to people calling her ugly, little monster, and so on. But Su Hongi was still a young girl after all. Since she was a young girl, how could she not care about her appearance and image? Especially now that she was still following Jun Xiaoyaro. Such a handsome young master, but there was an ugly person by his side. Su Hongi herself couldn't accept it. It's not too difficult. Come here, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Su Hongi walked in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyao's palm landed on Su Hongi's lower abdomen. Immediately, waves of order Dao appeared, accompanied by the chaos force. There was also a sealing force spreading. The third seal of the immortal forbidding seal. He used the chaos force to activate the third seal of the immortal forbidding seal to suppress the curse power in Su Hongyi's body. It would be difficult for anyone else to do it. But Jun Xiaoyaro could. At the next moment, Jun Xiaoyaro felt the backlash of the curse power. Endless illusions appeared in his mind as if billions of creatures were floating in a sea of blood and being sacrificed. Die, 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 this lineage must die. I'm innocent. I curse this lineage to die a horrible death. Hate, hate, hate. Boundless resentment and power of curses surged toward Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro frowned. Was this the source of the curse power? But what did it have to do with Su Hongyi? Or did Su Hongyi also come from a special lineage? And this bloodline had sacrificed countless lives to form this curse. Jun Xiaoyaro pondered. His primordial spirit activated the Tathagata Sutra of the Three Lives Celestial Sutra. A Mahavirokana Dharma form that could deliver all living beings from torment appeared. All kinds of resentment, curses, and evil spirits melted like snow in spring. Seal. Jun Xiaoyaro shouted. A powerful sealing force, accompanied by the chaos force, suppressed the curse power in Su Hongyi's body. As the curse power suppressed, the hideous scars on Su Hongyi's delicate body began to wriggle and then shrink. In the end, all the curse power was compressed in the spirit sea in Su Hongyi's lower abdomen. It turned into a rolling pitch-black fog. There seemed to be the curses of billions of resentful spirits coming out. And Su Hongyi's entire body, including her cheeks and delicate body, was no longer scarred. She was as white as snow, as tender as cream, and as fragrant as ever. She had a good foundation and was a beauty. It was just that the scars were covered up. Now, she had completely transformed from an ugly duckling to a swan. Anyone who saw her would be stunned. Is this me? Su Hongyi couldn't believe it herself. It was as if she was in a dream. She touched her body as if she was touching an exquisite piece of porcelain. Hongyi, change your clothes first. Jun Xiaoyaro said. For such a beautiful girl to touch herself in front of him, he felt that something was wrong. Only then did Su Hongyi come back to her senses. Her fair and delicate face was as red as blood. She put on a red dress in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. The way she put on her clothes was even more seductive than taking them off. Of course, Jun Xiaoyaro was also experienced and didn't feel anything in his heart at all. He looked at it purely with appreciation. With his cultivation and temperament, he could easily control his desires and not be controlled by them. Right now, I've only sealed the curse power in your body. It's hard to get rid of it for the time being. We'll have to find other ways in the future, Jun Xiaoyaro said. I'm already very grateful that young master helped me seal it. Even if it relapses in the future, I won't have the slightest bit of resentment, Su Hongyi said. After this, Su Hongyi was completely loyal to Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyao's mark was engraved from the inside out. Even if something happened to Su Hongyi in the future, or if she awakened some power, she would never betray Jun Xiaoyaro. This was the purpose of Jun Xiaoyaro sealing the curse power for her. Chapter 959. After settling Su Hongyi's matter for the time being, Su Hongyi left. He was not in a hurry to uncover the secret behind Su Hongyi. Next, I'll wait for the war in the desolate border to start, and then investigate the situation in the immortal domain. Right, there's also Luo Xiangling. It's time to take a look, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. If he neglected Luo Xiangling for too long, it would have the opposite effect. As long as Jun Xiaoyaro was still in the foreign domain, he still needed to grab hold of Luo Xiangling. Jun Xiaoyaro got up. Just as he was about to head to Luo Xiangling's residence, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. A smile appeared on his face. Then, Jun Xiaoyaro thought for a moment, and directly took a pen and paper, and casually scribbled on it. Every stroke contained a shocking Daoist rhyme. It could be said that it was very taxing on his mind. However, for Jun Xiaoyao's primordial spirit, this bit of mental effort was nothing. After a long time, Jun Xiaoyaro stopped writing, looked at it, hesitated for a moment, and shook his head slightly. There's still something missing. With that, Jun Xiaoyaro forced a drop of blood from the corner of his mouth, and it landed on the paper. This is good. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. After finishing his preparations, Jun Xiaoyaro directly headed to the depths of the Ars Academy, to Luo Xiangling's residence. In the purple bamboo forest, in a courtyard with a small bridge and flowing water. Luo Xiangling was wearing a plain long dress, and her jade-like fingers were holding a needle and thread, embroidering. Suddenly, she felt a slight pain between her fingers. A drop of blood appeared. The drop of blood was faintly blue. Looking at the drop of blood, Luo Xiangling was in a daze. Is my mind a little messed up? Luo Xiangling shook her head slightly. That embroidery needle was also a quasi-emperor weapon, or else it would not have pierced Luo Xiangling. In fact, Luo Xiangling's embroidery had never been pierced before. This was the first time. This also meant that her mind had not completely calmed down. In Luo Xiangling's mind, the scene of Jun Xiaoyaro sticking close to Tushan Wanwan's delicate body and teaching her cultivation suddenly appeared. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that he couldn't calm down. Fine, forget it. Luo Xiangling stopped embroidering. At this time, a spatial fluctuation appeared. Luo Xiangling subconsciously stood up. His eyes lit up as he glanced over. However, his eyes, which had just lit up, instantly dimmed. The newcomer was an extremely handsome middle-aged man dressed in luxurious green and gold robes. On his back, there was a pair of azure wings with extremely ancient patterns imprinted on them. His aura had reached the level of pseudo-immortal realm. Fufeng of Gojosian, why are you here? Luo Xiangling's tone was faint, with a trace of alienation. This Fufeng of Gojosian was also one of the ancient supreme warriors of Ars Academy, a quasi-immortal level warrior. His true form was a blue sky rock. The reason why Luo Xiangling's attitude towards him was a trace of alienation. It was because this Fufeng of Gojosian had feelings for her and often tried to curry favor with her. Luo Xiangling wasn't too interested in this kind of behavior. Recently, King Luo hasn't come to the Dao exchange. Is something the matter? Fufeng of Gojosian said with a smile. The ancient supreme warriors of Ars Academy didn't have any special missions or responsibilities. Apart from protecting Ars Academy, their only goal was to break through and become a true immortal king. And the Dao Exchange was a gathering for these ancient supreme warriors to exchange pointers and discuss the Dao. I'm just not in the mood recently. Luo Xiangling shook his head lightly. What did it have to do with the Fufeng of Gojosian whether she went or not? It was just that Luo Xiangling couldn't be bothered to fall out with him because they were both ancient supreme warriors of the same academy. I heard that recently, King Luo wanted to take in that chaos body as a disciple, but was rejected in the end. That person really doesn't know his place. Fufeng of Gojosian deliberately belittled Jun Xiaoyaro to curry favor with Luo Xiangling. However, Luo Xiangling frowned and said coldly, that's his choice. I won't force anyone. Fufeng of Gojosian's eyes flashed with a strange glint. Luo Xiangling actually treated him with such an attitude for an insignificant junior. He added, I just think that kid doesn't know his place. King Luo, you actually let him stay in your courtyard. This was what Fufeng of Gojosian cared about. After all, a single man and woman were in the same courtyard. Fufeng of Gojosian didn't believe that Luo Xiangling would have any relationship with that kid. However, he still felt a little uncomfortable. Fufeng of Gojosian, do I need your permission to do anything? Luo Xiangling frowned. Who was Fufeng of Gojosian to her? Why did she need Fufeng of Gojosian to evaluate her actions? If there were levels in flirting, Jun Xiaoyaro was definitely the king of glory. As for Fufeng of Gojosian, he was at most a stubborn bronze. At this moment, the space in the distance rippled. A white-clothed man came over. Senior Xiangling, I'm sorry. I wanted to come back as soon as possible, but I was delayed by some matters. The person who came was naturally Jun Xiaoyaro. He saw Fufeng of Gojosian at a glance, and his eyes flashed with a strange glint. Another quasi-immortal level student of the academy. The foundation of the Ars Academy was much stronger than he had imagined. Seeing the white-clothed figure that she hadn't seen for a long time, Luo Xiangling didn't know why, but she felt a little better. It was like the sky that was covered with dark clouds had cleared up. Is this the chaos constitution that caused a stir in the academy a while ago? Fufeng of Gojosian also looked at Jun Xiaoyao, and his eyes scanned him like sharp swords. Jun Xiaoyao immediately felt an enormous pressure pouring down on him. He knew. Fufeng of Gojosian just wanted to push him down and embarrass him. However, it was a little whimsical to think that he could push Jun Xiaoyao down with just pressure. Fufeng of Gojosian, what are you doing? How could Luo Xiangling not sense it? She raised her eyebrows, waved her hand, and dissolved the pressure. However, her eyes looking at Fufeng of Gojosian became more indifferent. I just want to see if this chaos constitution is real. Fufeng of Gojosian smiled. With his status, he couldn't lower himself to argue with Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes had a touch of coldness. He was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Besides, Jun Xiaoyao could see that Fufeng of Gojosian must have some ideas about Luo Xiangling. He would definitely have a conflict with him in the future. However, because Jun Xiaoyao's realm was not high, Fufeng of Gojosian didn't take him seriously. I have something else to do. Please leave. Luo Xiangling asked him to leave. Fufeng of Gojosian narrowed his eyes, and then said with a smile, in that case, I won't disturb you. After saying that, Fufeng of Gojosian turned and left. However, an extremely subtle sound transmission poured into Jun Xiaoyao's mind. Boy, even if you have an unparalleled chaos constitution, you have to understand that some people are out of your league. Jun Xiaoyao's expression didn't change as he watched Fufeng of Gojosian leave. Ha, out of my league. Jun Xiaoyao sneered secretly. He didn't expect that one day, this word would be used on him. If the creatures of the immortal region knew that with Jun Xiaoyao's status, he still had to climb up to others, they would probably laugh their heads off. In this world, how many people were qualified to be climbed up to by Jun Xiaoyao? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes overflowed with an indifferent cold light. So what if he was at the quasi-immortal level? Jun Xiaoyao didn't have no way to deal with him. If he really annoyed Jun Xiaoyao, he had plenty of ways to kill the Fufeng of Gojosian. Chapter 960. I'm sorry, Xiaoyao. That Fufeng of Gojosian is targeting you because of me. It has nothing to do with you. Luo Xiangling had an apologetic look on her face. After all, no one would want to become enemies with a quasi-immortal level expert. Jun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, was an undeserved calamity. Just because he was close to Luo Xiangling, he was targeted by the Fufeng of Gojosian. Senior Xiangling, you don't have to apologize. It's not your fault. Jun Xiaoyao smiled slightly. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's attitude, Luo Xiangling sighed inwardly. If it were other outstanding geniuses who suffered such an undeserved calamity, they would probably be furious and infuriated. But Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm and restrained. Luo Xiangling admired this kind of character. I haven't discussed Dao with you for a long time. Ever since I discussed with you, I don't want to communicate with others. Luo Xiangling chuckled. This was also the reason why she didn't participate in the ancient Supreme Dao discussion. She felt that communicating with those people was not as beneficial as communicating with Jun Xiaoyao. Then it's my honor. Jun Xiaoyao also smiled. The two were about to enter the room. But at this moment, a scroll of paper accidentally slipped out of Jun Xiaoyao's sleeve and fell to the ground. Luo Xiangling noticed. Jun Xiaoyao's expression changed slightly, and he bent down to pick it up. But that scroll of paper flew into Luo Xiangling's hand. This is. Luo Xiangling's beautiful eyes had a hint of curiosity. Senior Xiangling, this. Jun Xiaoyao revealed a hint of apprehension at the right time. Luo Xiangling, on the other hand, was curious and unfolded the scroll. Then, as if struck by lightning, she stood motionless on the spot. On the drawing paper was a woman standing by the banks of a river. She was dressed in a smoky long dress and her belt fluttered in the wind. She was as graceful as a fairy who wanted to ride the wind. Autumn water as divine jade as bones, hibiscus like a face, willow like eyebrows. Her eyes sparkled as she gazed into the distance. It was an extremely beautiful painting of a beauty. It could be said that any man who saw a peerless beauty like a fairy in a painting would be intoxicated and fascinated. More importantly, it wasn't just a painting. The woman in the painting and the river seemed to be moving. This was a technique that had been infused with spiritual energy and Daoist rhymes. Anyone who saw it would be able to comprehend it. This is me. Luo Xiangling was stunned. The woman in the painting was herself. However, Luo Xiangling was unable to calm down. Under the painting of the peerless beauty, there was a dense inscription. Luo Shenfu, Luo Xiangling murmured. Its shape is also like a graceful swan, graceful like a swimming dragon, glorious like an autumn chrysanthemum, magnificent like a spring pine. Looking at it from afar, it's as bright as the sun rising at dawn. Looking at it from afar, it's as bright as a lotus flower. The cloud bun is lofty, and the eyebrows are beautiful. Red lips are bright on the outside, white teeth are fresh on the inside, bright eyes are good, and dimples support the power. Turning round, the face is smooth and jade. The words are not spoken, and the breath is like an orchid. Beautiful and graceful, making me forget to eat. Luo Xiangling muttered silently, and her heart couldn't help but tremble. The person in the painting was beautiful. The poem was even more amazing. It was hard to imagine that such a shocking poem would come from the hands of a young man. And what made Luo Xiangling's heart tremble even more was that, on this painting, there was a drop of blood that was exceptionally dazzling. What did this mean? It meant that the person who drew this painting and wrote this poem had spent a lot of effort. Otherwise, every stroke wouldn't contain Daoist rhymes. Xiaoyao, you, Luo Xiangling looked at Jun Xiaoyao, and her sparkling eyes trembled slightly. Jun Xiaoyao had worked so hard for this poem and painting. If it were any other woman, her heart wouldn't be calm. I'm sorry, I took the liberty to inscribe and paint for Senior Xiangling. It's rude to Senior. Jun Xiaoyao showed a hint of apprehension at the right time. No, the painting is very good, and the poem is also very good. I didn't expect that, Xiaoyao. You are not only talented, but also have such a stunning talent. Luo Xiangling seemed to have gotten to know Jun Xiaoyao again. Not only was he peerless in appearance and monstrous talent, but he also had such amazing talent. That painting and that poem were definitely not something that ordinary people could do. To be honest, even Luo Xiangling couldn't believe that the painting and poem were about her. What made Luo Xiangling's heart skip a beat even more was that, why did Jun Xiaoyao make this poem and painting? Could it be because, Xiaoyao, can you give this to me? Luo Xiangling asked. This? Senior, if you don't mind, of course. Jun Xiaoyao said. Don't call me Senior, just call me by my name. Luo Xiangling said. Okay, Xiangling. Jun Xiaoyao nodded. Hearing this address, Luo Xiangling's heart suddenly jumped, and then he turned around and said, You go and cultivate first, I'll discuss the Tao with you later. After saying that, Luo Xiangling hurried back to his room. Looking at Luo Xiangling's departing figure, the touch of apprehension on Jun Xiaoyao's face dissipated. The corners of his mouth raised slightly. Naturally, he had done all of this on purpose. From painting to inscribing the poem to dripping a drop of his heart's blood. Then he deliberately pretended to accidentally fall out and be seen by Luo Xiangling. Jun Xiaoyao had meticulously planned every step of the way. He didn't hope to completely capture Luo Xiangling. As long as he could bravely step forward to help him if he encountered any danger in the future, that would be enough. The power of a pseudo-immortal was immeasurable. Although I've already reached this step, I still don't know what Luo Xiangling's true attitude towards me is. It's time to test it. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. He had a new plan. The reason why Jun Xiaoyao spent so much effort to rope in Luo Xiangling. It was because he had a premonition that he would definitely stir up a huge storm in the foreign realm. At that time, he needed a top expert to stand behind him. If it was in the immortal domain, Jun Xiaoyao naturally wouldn't need to spend so much effort to borrow power. With just a casual sentence, who knew how many experts would be willing to stand behind Jun Xiaoyao? But this was the foreign realm after all, the Jun family's hand couldn't reach here. Meanwhile, on the other side, Luo Xiangling, who returned to her room, felt her heart pounding. This was a feeling she had never felt before. She once again looked at the woman in the painting, as well as the inscription. The more she looked, the happier she felt. If someone praised her beauty or something in front of her, Luo Xiangling would instead feel a bit disgusted. For example, Fufeng of Gojosian was like this in the past. And this kind of method, it had to be said that it completely struck Luo Xiangling's heart. Am I really that beautiful? Looking at the beautiful woman standing gracefully by the river bank in the painting, Luo Xiangling's beautiful eyes couldn't help but become blurred. She was a bit dazed. What kind of deity painted this, to be able to depict this kind of beauty? Xiao Yarou is indeed very interesting. Luo Xiangling muttered inwardly. A touch of moving red clouds appeared on her incomparably beautiful dimples. In the following period of time, Jun Xiaoyaro had been staying in Luo Xiangling's courtyard. This place was filled with dragon qi, which was also helpful for Jun Xiaoyao's cultivation. Jun Xiaoyaro and Luo Xiangling also discussed the Tao from time to time. When they were in the mood, they would even recite poems, paint, and play the zither. Jun Xiaoyao's Tao of the zither once again amazed Luo Xiangling. The sound of the zither was like the sound of nature, fused with the Tao, refreshing the heart. In Luo Xiangling's eyes, Jun Xiaoyaro was simply a boy who was a treasure waiting to be unearthed. The relationship between the two of them naturally became more and more harmonious. There was even a trace of the feeling of an immortal couple in love. Amidst this leisurely atmosphere, Yi Zichen smiled. Mu Laro arrived with a somewhat serious expression and told Jun Xiaoyaro a piece of news. Prince Mo Jie of the Morjie imperial family is about to awaken. There is already news that Prince Mo Jie is going to fight with Xiaoyaro on Mount War God. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The new check-in location has been refreshed. Please check in at Mount War God. Chapter 961. Prince Mo Jie, the battle at War God Mountain? Jun Xiaoyaro pondered. He knew about Prince Mo Jie. He was one of the 7 minor emperors of the foreign territory. He had been hibernating. Jun Xiaoyaro had also figured out the reason why Prince Mo Jie wanted to fight him. First of all, he had the ability to be immune to magic power. As for the Morjie imperial clan's divine ability, it was magic power immunity. Just based on this reason, the Morjie clan couldn't ignore Jun Xiaoyaro. And the second reason? Naturally, it was because Prince Mo Jie needed a shocking battle record to consolidate his reputation and status. Jun Xiaoyaro was the most famous young genius in the foreign territory's 10 great continents. Naturally, he was the best whetstone. It could be said that Prince Mo Jie's move was firstly to establish his reputation, and secondly to investigate the reason for his magic immunity. Xiaoyao, you can't be careless. That Prince Mo Jie's strength is extraordinary. And he chose a place like War God Mountain for a reason, Elder Mu said. Jun Xiaoyaro was now the quasi-war god of the War God Academy. And Prince Mo Jie had chosen to fight him on War God Mountain. It could be seen that if Jun Xiaoyaro lost, then the title of quasi-war god was a bit laughable. Where is War God Mountain? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. War God Mountain is in the depths of our academy. It's where the first war god sealed his weapon, Elder Mu said. The first war god sealed his weapon? Jun Xiaoyaro was curious. That's right. The title of war god for the younger generation of our world follows the name of the first war god. Rumor has it that the first war god had the power to destroy the world. He was once a nightmare of the immortal territory. But in the end, the first war god sealed his weapon and stuck his weapon, God's weeping halberd, on a mountain peak. That is War God Mountain. And from then until now, no one has been able to pull out the God's weeping halberd, not even a quasi-immortal. Old Mu's words made Jun Xiaoyaro ponder. That first-generation war god was quite interesting. The current war god title originated from that first-generation war god. The power to destroy the world, could it be? Jun Xiaoyaro had a certain guess in his mind. He subconsciously looked at his wrist. If the dark hexagram mark appeared, it would be the end of the world. It would definitely be even more shocking than the chaotic body. Xiaoyao, don't worry. Even the Morjie imperial clan cannot act recklessly in the Ars Academy, Luo Xiangling said with concern. She was afraid that the Morjia imperial clan would give Jun Xiaoyaro a lot of psychological pressure. Xiangling, thank you, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Elder Mu's eyelids twitched as he looked between the two of them in shock. Since when did these two people have such a good relationship? Even the way they address each other was so intimate. Could it be that the rumors were true? Luo Wang was an old cow eating young grass? Of course, Elder Mu was very tactful. He naturally wouldn't say anything. He could only look down. Thank you for your reminder, Elder Mu. I will take this matter to heart. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded. By the way, there's one more thing to tell you. The war in the desolate border has started. Your training in the desolate border is coming soon. The celestial realm can't be underestimated either. Many monsters have appeared, such as the emperor of the Jun family, the princess of the Xianting, and so on. There are also the various ancient clans and families of the ancients, Elder Mu reminded. I understand, Jun Xiaoyaro said. He could see those familiar figures again. He really couldn't wait. After Elder Mu left, Jun Xiaoyaro continued to stay at Luo Xiangling's place. As for Prince Mo Jie, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't care too much about him. Even if Prince Mo Jie was a paragon, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't care at all. What he was more concerned about was the system's notification in his mind. What good things could he get from signing in at War God Mountain? This was what Jun Xiaoyaro cared about. Time passed day by day. On the other side, Tushan Wanwan also often wanted to find Jun Xiaoyaro to spar. But she didn't see him every time. Young Master Xiaoyaro hasn't come back yet? Tushan Wanwan was very disappointed. Sister Wanwan, I think you should go back to Tushan and wait for the start of the matchmaking convention, Tushan Chun said seriously. Fifth sister, are you protecting your food? Tushan Wanwan reached out and pinched Tushan Chuan's chubby cheeks. She pulled them into all kinds of strange shapes. Sister Wanwan, I'm serious. I might have really found my Mr. Right, Tushan Chun said seriously. Tushan Wanwan was slightly taken aback. Then she smiled and said, then what should I do? Fourth sister, I seem to have feelings for young master too. I won't allow it. Tushan Chuan's hair stood on end. Her silky white hair was fluffy and stood up. Haha, maybe when we bring young master back to Tushan, the three sisters will also like him, Tushan Wanwan teased. No, young master will be squeezed dry. Tushan Chun was anxious. She couldn't wait to monopolize him. How could she split him into 5 portions? Besides, who could stand it when there were 5 sisters? Maybe when it was her turn in the end, there wouldn't be a drop left. After teasing Tushan Chun, Tushan Wanwan also had to go back. At the door, Yun Xiaohei was waiting with the heavenly feather horse. That chaotic body, how can he? Yun Xiaohei's eyes were dark. Recently, Tushan Wanwan often came to see Jun Xiaoyaro, but Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't there. This made Yun Xiaohei's heart twist with jealousy. To him, Tushan Wanwan was just out of his reach. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't bother to pay attention to her and put her to the back of his mind. The gap between them was too big. Xiaohei, let's go back. Tushan Wanwan walked over with a touch of disappointment on her face. Your Highness, is it worth it? Yun Xiaohei couldn't help but ask. Logically speaking, he didn't have the guts to take the initiative to talk to Tushan Wanwan. But he couldn't stand it anymore. Tushan Wanwan was stunned. Obviously, she didn't expect Yun Xiaohei to say something like that. She smiled faintly and said, Xiaohei, you have no idea how much I can gain from practicing with young master. Even if I can only get a little guidance from him, my strength will improve greatly. Is it really just to improve your strength? Yun Xiaohei asked, gritting his teeth. He didn't know why he had the courage to say something like that. Tushan Wanwan blushed and her eyes drifted. She said, Well, if you say you like him, then, Tushan Wanwan didn't say anything else. But her expression was like that of a young girl who was in love. Your Highness, I always feel that there's something wrong with the chaotic body. Maybe he's plotting something against young master, Yun Xiaohei said. He wanted to wake Tushan Wanwan up so that she wouldn't fall deeper. Unexpectedly, The smile on Tushan Wanwan's face disappeared immediately. She frowned and seemed a little angry. Xiaohei, since you've been my groom for so many years, I'll warn you this time. This is the only time. I won't allow anyone to speak ill of young master behind his back. If there's a next time, don't be my groom anymore. Then, Tushan Wanwan got on the heavenly feather horse and left alone with a cold face. Your Highness. Yun Xiaohei's face was pale and his lips were trembling. He was just reminding her out of kindness. But Tushan Wanwan was so angry. Tushan Wanwan was a straightforward person and rarely got angry. She didn't scold or beat him like a servant. Instead, she was very frank and friendly. This was also one of the reasons why Yun Xiaohei liked Tushan Wanwan. But now, he just questioned Jun Xiaoyaro a little. Tushan Wanwan was so cold to him. Yun Xiaohei's heart hurt so much that it was about to split open. His eyes seemed to be tainted by darkness, revealing a bone-deep jealousy and resentment. Originally, he hadn't completely made up his mind. But now, Yun Xiaohei had made up his mind. He was going to leave Tushan Wanwan and go to the demon-sealing grave. He was going to unravel his own secret and become the strongest. Wanwan, you'll definitely become my woman. And that chaotic body, I'll make you pay the price. Yun Xiaohei's eyes were filled with determination. He turned and left. Chapter 962. Time flowed by bit. As the battle situation on the desolate border intensified, an aura of an approaching storm also pervaded the air. Of course, compared to Immortal Domain, the other side's creatures clearly had great confidence in their own side. They didn't view this as a war, but rather a hunt. A hunt for Immortal Domain's heavenly talent. All of War God Academy's heavenly talents were rubbing their fists and palms, eager to give it a try, preparing to head to the desolate border. Meanwhile, during this period of time, there were also some news that spread out one after another. Some of the Undying Emperor clan's exceptional heavenly talents, imperial princes, heavenly daughters, and others woke up one after another. After all, during this training, Immortal Domain's side would definitely have seed-level heavenly talents appear. That was why on this side, they also needed some imperial princes and heavenly daughters to oversee the situation. Of course, there was another reason why many people attached importance to this training. It was precisely because this training might bestow the title of War God to the one with the most outstanding performance. This was but the most supreme and glorious title of the other side's younger generation. It was enough to make countless heavenly talents go crazy. Together with the fact that the foreign side's martial aura was already extremely strong. The weight of this War God title was even more so extremely heavy. If they could obtain it, no matter where they went to in the future, they would obtain the respect of all sides. Meanwhile, amidst this type of atmosphere, an explosive piece of news spread out. Morgia Imperial Clan's Imperial Prince had awakened, and he was going to fight against the primal chaos body on War God Mountain. This news was like a giant rock falling into a sea, stirring up heaven-reaching giant waves. It could be said that this was the greatest event before heading to the desolate border. There was no need to talk about Jun Xiaoyao's current reputation. Ever since he appeared, he had never tasted defeat. Meanwhile, Morgia Imperial Clan's Imperial Prince Mojia's strength wasn't just for show either. He was a true young supreme being. This wasn't like that supreme being old servant at Li Zhouyi's side. He was a true heavenly talent supreme being. The two were both supreme beings, but there was an essential difference. This battle could be said to be even more exciting than the battle between Jun Xiaoyaro and Li Zhouyi. It was because before, the two were both at the half-supreme being level. And now, it was a battle between a supreme being and a half-supreme being. Do you all think the primal chaos body will accept the challenge? I don't think so. Prince Mojie is not an ordinary supreme being. His strength is extremely strong even among supreme beings. Let's see how the chaotic body responds. If he doesn't accept the challenge, then the title of quasi-war god would be a bit empty. That's not it. Utmost exalted and quasi-utmost exalted are not on the same level to begin with. Just as the Ars Academy's prodigies were paying attention to this matter, Jun Xiaoyao's response was heard. There was only one word. Yes. When this word came out, it could be said that it was unexpected for everyone. The meaning of the word allow was not just agree. There was also a sense of acceptance of the challenge. Prince Mo Jie was just a challenger. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, was like the guardian of the throne. There was a natural difference between the two. Jun Xiaoyaro was putting himself in a superior position by agreeing to the challenge of a person who was inferior to him. This undoubtedly caused everyone to be shocked. Primal chaos body? Is he looking down on even the princes of the immortal imperial clans? Awesome. When the time comes, I will definitely go to War God Mountain to watch the battle. This instead aroused everyone's interest even more. Even some of the Ars Academy's elders were interested and wanted to go and watch when the time came. Morgia imperial clan's ancestral land, on a floating imperial mountain. Suddenly, heaven and earth surged with brilliance, and all kinds of magical patterns interweaved in the void. Waves of strange power pervaded the air. In the sky, a bird flew past. However, as soon as it approached that strange power, the bird seemed to have lost all of its magical power and fell from the sky. In the endless brilliance, a transcendent figure walked over. It was an extremely handsome man. His long hair reached his waist and fluttered without wind. His skin was like white jade, even more delicate than a woman's. Around his body, the strange power transformed into 10 divine halos, enveloping his body. In contrast, the young man looked like a mythical ancient god. He was Prince Mo Jie of the Morgia imperial clan, and also one of the 7 minor emperors of the foreign domain. A wave of power of laws pervaded his body. Prince Mo Jie was a true young supremacy, not a quasi-supremacy. The 10 divine halos surrounding his body were the manifestation of his imperial clan's ability. Invulnerability and magical power immunity. No divine ability or magical power could break through his 10 immunity divine halos. No matter how powerful a move was, after being weakened by the 10 immunity divine halos, it would be useless. In the end, when it landed on Prince Mo Jie's body, it would be as light as a feather without any power. This was the terrifying part of the Morgia imperial clan. The immortal imperial clans of the foreign domain definitely had their reasons for being able to become immortal imperial clans. Infernal Reflection, Morgia, Parameter, and other imperial clans all had their own unique bloodline inheritance divine abilities that were extremely powerful. Prince, you have already cultivated 10 divine halos, so you need to find a whetstone. The chaotic body is a good choice. The voice of the Morgia imperial clan's great figure came from the void. Of course I know. Prince Mo Jie nodded slightly. Oh right, also, find out the source of the chaotic body's magical power immunity. Our clan's bloodline divine ability cannot be easily spread, the great figure said solemnly. That's for sure. As long as we defeat him, if he is willing to join our clan, we can let him retain this ability. However, if he is not willing to join, we can only let him destroy this ability himself. Prince Mo Jie's voice was calm. He spoke as if defeating the chaotic body was a matter of course. Prince, don't underestimate the chaotic body, the great figure said. Prince Mo Jie smiled and said, if the chaotic body is in the supreme realm, then I will treat it with caution. However, there is an insurmountable gap between a quasi-supreme and a supreme. I am not an ordinary supreme. After Prince Mo Jie finished speaking, he strode out like a deity on a journey. For a moment, heaven and earth rumbled, and gazes from all directions gathered. Prince Mo Jie has come out of seclusion. Interesting, he is going directly to the Ars Academy. Follow him, we will witness an exciting battle between geniuses. Perhaps the undefeated legend of the chaotic body will come to an end in this battle. Pull one hair and the whole body will be affected. Many creatures from other clans followed closely behind. This was the real 7 minor emperors. Among the younger generation, he was definitely a top-notch existence. This battle was also extremely eye-catching, and news had spread before. Now, the main character had appeared and was heading to the Ars Academy. On the Ars Academy's side, Jun Xiaoyaro received Elder Mu's news immediately. Prince Mo Jie is already here? Jun Xiaoyao's face didn't change at all. It was as calm as the water of a lake. Young friend, you don't have to accept the battle. Wait until you break through to the supreme realm. After all, there is a huge gap between a supreme and a quasi-supreme. Elder Mu was thinking for Jun Xiaoyao. Although Jun Xiaoyao had killed a supreme with the cultivation of a quasi-supreme. However, the strength of that old servant was obviously incomparable to Prince Mo Jie. If Jun Xiaoyao avoided the battle, he would be criticized by a small number of people, but it was indeed reasonable. After all, this battle was unfair because of the difference in cultivation level. No need, Elder Mu, I will go directly to the Ars Mountain to wait for him. Jun Xiaoyao smiled. Compared to Prince Mo Jie, Jun Xiaoyao was obviously more interested in signing in at the Ars Mountain. Chapter 963. Mount War God was located in the depths of Ars Academy. It was a majestic mountain peak that towered into the sky. At the top of Mount War, one could look down on the world. Back then, the first god of war founded Ars Academy and inherited the title of God of War. He inserted his personal weapon, the god's weeping halberd, into the peak of the mountain. Until today, no one had been able to pull it out. Since then, Mount War God had become the sacred ground of Ars Academy. Countless beings from other realms came to Mount War God to pay homage to the first god of war. It could be said that Mount War God was the place of honor and faith of Ars Academy. And now, in the entire War God Mountain, inside and outside, it was unknown just how many foreign creatures were gathered here. Many people had arrived early and occupied a good spot, waiting for the earth-shattering battle to begin. Prince Bian, Li Jiuyi, Pu Yarrow, and other heavenly king-tier prodigies had arrived early. Everyone, what do you think will happen this time? Li Jiuyi asked. The legend of the invincible chaotic body will end, Pu Yarrow said coldly. I'm here to witness his defeat. Prince Bian's eyes flashed coldly. During the last Chosen One gathering, Jun Xiaoyao had slapped him in the face, making him lose face. This time, Prince Bian came to see how strong Jun Xiaoyao was. If Prince Mo Jie could easily suppress Jun Xiaoyao, then he wouldn't be afraid of Jun Xiaoyao. If that were the case, he wouldn't have to be too wary of Jun Xiaoyao, and he would be able to get back at him directly. On the other side, Tushan Wanwan, Tushan Chun Chun, Fei Qingxue, and Su Hongyi had also arrived. When Su Hongyi appeared, the crowd was surprised. She was wearing a red dress that was exquisite and refined. Many exclaimed that Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were indeed as sharp as torches, picking out gold from the sand. Sister Wanwan, what's wrong? Seeing that Tushan Wanwan seemed a little angry, Tushan Chun Chun couldn't help but ask curiously. I just taught Blackie a little lesson, and he ran away. To think that I picked him up back then. Tushan Wanwan was a little angry. Yun Xiaohei ran away alone. After a long time, even a dog would know how to be grateful and repay its owner. In the end, Yun Xiaohei slipped away without a word. Tushan Wnwan wouldn't have been so angry even if he had just greeted her. Isn't he just a coachman? Why are you angry, big sis Wanwan? Tushan Chun Chun pursed her lips and thought it was something big. Forget it. Don't worry about him. I've done my best for him. Who told him to doubt you behind your back? Tushan Wnwan also shook her head. Yun Xiaohei's biggest mistake was doubting Jun Xiaoyao. It was fine if such an ingrate left. Mister's opponent is Prince Mo Jie. Tushan Chuanchuan's eyes were filled with worry. As one of the 7 small emperors, Prince Mo Jie's prestige in the other side was extremely great. I believe in young master. He has the ability. Tushan Wan said resolutely. When she sparred with Jun Xiaoyao, she could feel that Jun Xiaoyao's strength was even more unfathomable than the universe. Jun Xiaoyao had definitely never used his full strength. Even when he killed the old paragon servant, Jun Xiaoyao definitely didn't use his full strength. This was the reason why Tushan Wan had so much confidence in him. As time passed, more and more people gathered around Mount War God. Even some of the Ars Academy's elders came to watch the battle. After all, this could be considered a battle between the elites of the younger generation in the other side. Prince Mo Jie, one of the 7 small emperors, versus the quasi-god of war chaotic body. Finally, under everyone's gaze, a peerless figure in white flew over. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm as he looked at Mount War God. A breeze blew over, blowing up strands of hair. Each strand was sparkling, as if there was a flow of energy. Many of the women who saw Jun Xiaoyaro for the first time had a look of awe in their eyes. No wonder even the Luo king wants to eat the cradle. The chaotic body is too extraordinary. Many proud women's eyes were filled with splendor. Being handsome doesn't make a living. When Prince Mo Jie comes, will he still be able to maintain his aloofness? Some male geniuses whispered in private. Sir, the eyes of Tushan Chun Chun and the others also lit up. However, they were also very tactful. Jun Xiaoyao's battle was about to begin, and he needed to adjust his state. It wasn't good for them to disturb him. Jun Xiaoyaro leisurely stepped onto the God of War mountain. Tens of thousands of eyes followed Jun Xiaoyao's movements. Mount War God was very tall and steep, and there was a hidden pressure. It was like the God of War, standing proudly in the world. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm, and his footsteps were neither fast nor slow. Prince Mo Jie hadn't arrived yet, so he could sign in at Mount War God first. Soon, Jun Xiaoyaro arrived at the peak of Mount War God. Looking around, the entire peak of Mount War God was extremely vast. The entire Mount War God was branded with ancient and profound runes. Even a battle between supreme powerhouses wouldn't be able to shake the entire mountain. Jun Xiaoyaro saw it at a glance. At the center of the mountain peak, a dark golden halberd was inserted upside down in the center. That halberd was 7 feet long. Its entire body was dark and reflected a dark golden light. The most special thing about it was that there were blood-red lines on the halberd's body. It looked like the blood vessels of a human. A desolate, murderous, domineering, and vast aura surged. God's weeping halberd. The founder of Ars Academy, the soldier of the first God of War. It was inserted into Mount War God, and no one had been able to pull it out since ancient times. This wasn't an existence that could be pulled out with strength alone. It needed a kind of will to bear the life of the God of War. Jun Xiaoyaro felt it the moment he saw the god's weeping halberd. His wrist was faintly hot, like a soldering iron. The dark hexagram mark seemed to be unable to control itself and was about to manifest on its own. As expected, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed with a dark light. It was just as he had expected. The founder of Ars Academy, the first God of War. He was also one of the 6 world destruction kings, and if Jun Xiaoyao's guess was correct, the person he had killed in the heavenly tomb was that demon-like man. If nothing went wrong, he should be the successor of the first God of War. In other words, the first God of War's destiny was inherited by that man. In the end, Jun Xiaoyao directly killed that man in the heavenly tomb. As a result, the destiny and the black hexagram mark fell on his body. In this way, Jun Xiaoyaro was the successor of the first God of War's will. The word fate was indeed magical. Jun Xiaoyaro approached the god's weeping halberd. The entire Mount War God began to tremble slightly. What's going on? Some of the Ars Academy's elders were shocked. Elder Mu was also there. He also looked at the god's weeping halberd with some surprise. This god's weeping halberd had been motionless for several eras. But today, Elder Mu took a deep look at Jun Xiaoyaro. On the other side, after Jun Xiaoyaro approached the god's weeping halberd, a system notification sounded in his mind. You have arrived at Mount War God. Do you want to sign in? Sign in. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the 7-star reward, War God Catalog. Chapter 964. As the system's notification sounded, 49 maps of the God of War immediately appeared in Jun Xiaoyao's mind. Each of these 49 paintings was branded with the silhouette of a supreme expert who could reach the heavens and the earth. Some held battle spears that pierced into the sky, while others held huge axes that split the ground. Some fought against the heavens and fought against the earth, while others dominated the primordial world. Each of them could be said to be a peerless God of War with unparalleled might. There was also the essence of many battles condensed within, containing the great Tao of mystical abilities. This is the God of War catalog. Jun Xiaoyaro was surprised. He originally thought that this God of War catalog should be something like a cultivation technique or mystical ability. Now, it seemed that the God of War catalogue was neither a cultivation technique nor a mystical ability. Strictly speaking, it was a supreme cultivation technique that described the profoundness of martial arts and the profoundness of mystical abilities. Each of the 49 maps of the God of War contained an incomparably profound battle essence and profoundness. As the saying went, there were 49 of the Dayan numbers. These 49 maps of the God of War had already evolved the essence of mystical abilities to the extreme. This might be what I need the most. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes lit up. He didn't lack cultivation techniques or mystical abilities now. What he lacked was comprehension. This was also the reason why Zhun Xiaoyao couldn't comprehend the third move of the Great Tao of Origins, Genesis, which he created himself. It wasn't because Zhun Xiaoyao's comprehension wasn't strong enough. It was because his foundation was too thin and he lacked accumulation. Those who could create their own mystical abilities were at least powerhouses who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Their experiences and horizons were extremely rich and could be said to be a treasure trove. As for Zhun Xiaoyao, he was still too young. Among cultivators, 20 to 30 years old was at most equivalent to a fledgling youth, not to mention a baby. For Zhun Xiaoyao to be able to reach this realm at this age, he was already an absolute monster. His life experience clearly couldn't be compared to some old monsters who had lived for tens of thousands of years. And this God of War catalogue could make up for Zhun Xiaoyao's lack of accumulation. Even if I take out one of these 49 maps of the God of War and let a paragon comprehend it, it can create a God of War. Not to mention, if I can comprehend all 49 maps of the God of War, I'm afraid I won't be inferior to Great Emperor Ancient Chaos at his peak, Zhun Xiaoyao thought to himself. The Ancient Chaos Great Emperor had spent his entire life in battle. His battle experience and accumulation could be said to be extremely rich. It was precisely because of this that he was able Ancient God of Chaos. To a certain extent, the catalogue of God of War had saved Zhun Xiaoyao a lot of time. If he were to comprehend all 49 portraits of the God of War, his comprehension of mystiques would definitely not be weaker than Ancient Chaos Emperor. He could even ascend to a whole new realm. I have a premonition that if I can comprehend this Battle God catalogue and gain some inspiration, I will be able to evolve the third move of my source Great Tao Mystique. Zhun Xiaoyao's self-created divine ability, Genesis, currently only had 2 moves. Light of God, Punishment of God. There were also 2 killer moves that could be used at the same time. However, that killer move couldn't be considered the third move. Zhun Xiaoyao was confident. If his Genesis could evolve to the third move, it would definitely be stronger than the fusion of the first 2 moves. After signing in for the God of War catalogue, Zhun Xiaoyao directly sat cross-legged beside the god's weeping war halberd and began to comprehend it. In any case, Prince Mo Jie hadn't arrived yet. He could take advantage of this time to comprehend the essence of the God of War catalogue. Why did the chaotic physique sit down directly? Many people were puzzled. In front of a great enemy, it's time to adjust my state of mind. Many people thought that Zhun Xiaoyao was calming his emotions. After all, his opponent this time wasn't a genius at the level of the 10 heavenly kings. He was a true supreme genius, one of the 7 minor emperors. Perhaps no one in the younger generation of the foreign world could remain indifferent when facing the 7 minor emperors. They naturally didn't know that Zhun Xiaoyao was comprehending the God of War catalogue. Time passed bit by bit. What puzzled everyone was that Prince Mo Jie didn't arrive soon. It was as if he was deliberately stalling for time, making Zhun Xiaoyao wait here. I understand now. Prince Mo Jie wants to make the primal chaos body feel pressured. That's right. The longer he delays, the easier it is for his state of mind to fluctuate. Prince Mo Jie's psychological tactic is really brilliant. Not to mention the academy disciples, even the elders sighed. As one of the 7 minor emperors, Prince Mo Jie was indeed extraordinary. The details were revealed. Just this psychological tactic of stalling for time showed how meticulous Prince Mo Jie's thoughts were. I don't know if my little friend can withstand this kind of pressure. Elder Mu looked at Zhun Xiaoyao. Zhun Xiaoyao was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. In this short period of time, Zhun Xiaoyao had already comprehended the subtleties of a few God of War catalogue. I see. There are actually such wonderful techniques hidden in the God of War catalogue that need to be extracted. Jun Xiaoyaro was enlightened. In this short period of time, he had comprehended a kind of essence in the God of War catalogue. Battle sacred technique. Mastering one technique, mastering all techniques. Such a technique could deduce all mystical abilities and simulate all battle techniques. This was the essence of the God of War catalogue. Jun Xiaoyaro had only just come into contact with it, but he had already comprehended such a profound essence. It had to be said that his talent was extremely monstrous. Outsiders naturally didn't know what Jun Xiaoyaro had gained. If Prince Mojie found out that he was deliberately stalling for time just to let Jun Xiaoyaro comprehend a new technique, he would definitely vomit. He would probably vomit blood. In the following period of time, Jun Xiaoyaro comprehended some fragmented mystical abilities from the God of War catalogue. For example, the Battle Tablet Hand, Mountain Moving Seal, Sky Opening Fist, and so on. Although they weren't earth-shattering mystical abilities, they could enrich Jun Xiaoyao's combat methods. After all, his current identity was the chaotic physique. Many of his previous moves couldn't be used. Otherwise, his identity would be exposed. Finally, 10 days later, in the sky of the God of War Academy, a golden path intertwined with the power of laws spread out from the distant sky. On the golden path, a transcendent figure leisurely walked over. It was an extremely handsome man. His long hair reached his waist and fluttered in the wind. His skin was as smooth as jade, even more delicate than many women's. There were 10 divine halos around him, enveloping his body. It was as if he was a handsome god who had walked out of a myth, with the halo of the great Tao. Prince Mojie had arrived. It's Prince Mojie. The entire God of War mountain was in an uproar, and the gazes of the prodigies from all directions gathered. For many of them, it was their first time seeing the 7 minor emperor-level prodigies. One look was enough to make one's heart tremble. This was simply the son of a god descending into the world. Prince Mojie's aura was too transcendent, and his supreme being aura surged. The 10 dharmic immunity divine halos made him look like the son of a god. The aura and pressure that assaulted one's face made one feel awe and respect. At the same time, Jun Xiaoyaro, who was sitting cross-legged beside the god's tear battle halberd, also slowly opened his eyes. The two's gazes intertwined in the void. The world went silent, and everyone held their breaths. An earth-shattering battle was about to unfold. Chapter 965. One of them was one of the 7 minor emperors, the prince of the Maurya imperial family. The other was the quasi-war god of the War God Academy, the chaotic body that had never tasted defeat since he was born. It could be said that this battle was definitely eye-catching. Not only were there countless geniuses around Mount War God, there were also those hidden gazes that were cast over from thousands of miles away. They were also looking at the War God Mountain. Many big shots were curious about Jun Xiaoyao's background. But because Jun Xiaoyaro had the mysterious immortal backing him, they didn't dare to be too presumptuous. And in this battle, they might be able to find some clues. Chaotic body, here I come. Prince Mojie's tone was incomparably calm, and the corners of his mouth even curled up slightly. He was like an old friend who had known each other for many years. From this, it could be seen that Prince Mojie's vision and bearing were not something that the 10 heavenly kings could compare to. There must be a reason why he could become one of the 7 minor emperors. Prince Mojie. Jun Xiaoyaro slowly stood up, his white clothes spotless. He could feel the power of laws surging in Prince Mojie's body. It was definitely not something that the old paragon servant beside Li Jiui could compare to. Moreover, Jun Xiaoyaro also noticed that beside Prince Mojie, 10 divine halos overlapped and enveloped his body. A somewhat familiar fluctuation spread out. Magical power immunity. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes dimmed. He also had this ability, and it was obtained through signing in. Obviously, the Maurya imperial family also had this power. Not only that, but it had also turned into a concrete immunity divine halo. Jun Xiaoyao's primordial spirit in his mind began to deduce like a supercomputer. After obtaining the War God catalogue, he could deduce all the cultivation techniques and abilities in the world. Of course, Because it was just a preliminary comprehension, Jun Xiaoyaro couldn't immediately deduce it to an extremely profound level. But as long as he could leave an impression, that was enough. In the future, Jun Xiaoyaro could use this to materialize his magical power immunity and make it stronger. Prince Mo Jie looked at Jun Xiaoyaro and frowned slightly. For some reason, although he could feel that Jun Xiaoyao's cultivation was only at the quasi-supreme level, lower than his, however, there was always a faint sense of unease in his heart. Maybe it's just an illusion. Prince Mo Jie shook his head slightly and looked at Jun Xiaoyaro. I heard that you used some kind of immunity during the Heavenly Immortal Feast in the Heavenly Tomb continent. Where did you get it from? Hearing this, everyone held their breaths and listened attentively. After all, magic power immunity was the Morjie Imperial clan's bloodline ability. Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't a member of the Morjie Imperial clan. How could he have obtained this divine ability? Jun Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent. He couldn't possibly expose the sign-in system. Furthermore, Prince Mo Jie's interrogative tone displeased him. What does that have to do with you? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Oh, it seems like he is a tough nut to crack. Prince Mo Jie did not mind and did not get angry. Since you don't want to say it, it's very simple. It's impossible for our clan to allow the bloodline ability to be spread outside. Since you have a rare chaotic body, how about this? After we defeat you, you will join our clan. What do you think? Prince Mo Jie's words caused the expressions of many geniuses to change. Not only was Prince Mo Jie not angry, but he also wanted to invite Jun Xiaoyaro to join the Morjie Imperial clan. It had to be said that this step was very deep. From this, it could be seen that Prince Mo Jie was different from Prince Bian, Li Jiuyi, and other geniuses. Prince Mo Jie wanted to take Jun Xiaoyaro in for his own use. This is not good. If the chaotic body really joins the Morjie Imperial clan, then in addition to Prince Mo Jie, wouldn't the Morjie Imperial clan have two immortal geniuses in the future? Many people's expressions changed when they thought of this. Although they were currently in the war between the two worlds, the foreign realm was united against the foreign realm. It was impossible for the immortal imperial clans to have no friction between them. In the celestial realm, the Jun family had conflicts with the Xian Ting, let alone the foreign realm. Jun Xiaoyaro joining the Morjie Imperial clan was obviously not good news for the imperial clans that were vaguely hostile to the Morjie Imperial clan. Sister Wanwan, sir, Tushan Chuanchuan's little face had a trace of nervousness. They still wanted to pull Jun Xiaoyaro into Tushan. Let's see sir's choice. I believe sir is not the kind of person who is willing to be subordinate to others, Tushan Wanwan said. If Jun Xiaoyaro joined Tushan, he would have the identity of the princess's son-in-law. And joining the Morjie Imperial clan would only make him a tool of the Morjie Imperial clan. If other geniuses could receive an invitation from an imperial clan, they would definitely be eager to join. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was very calm. With a hint of playfulness, he said, join the Morjie Imperial clan and become your vassal. Of course. You have the chaotic body. Your status is the same as mine, Prince Mo Jie said with a smile. What if I don't agree? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Prince Mo Jie narrowed his eyes slightly. Then he smiled and said, if you don't agree, you still have to join. However, the method will not be so gentle. Obviously, with Jun Xiaoyao's chaotic body, even the Morjie Imperial clan could not bear to kill him. However, Prince Mo Jie's intention was very clear. If Jun Xiaoyaro did not agree, the Morjie Imperial clan would naturally have a way to control Jun Xiaoyaro and use him for their own purposes. I'm afraid you won't be able to hold this sword of mine. You'll hurt yourself instead. Jun Xiaoyaro also smiled. Then you can try. Prince Mo Jie flicked his sleeves. 10 divine rings shone around him. A supreme aura poured out, causing the surroundings to tremble and the sky to change color. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled coldly. In the next moment, he raised his hand and grabbed the god's weeping halberd. This sudden scene caused everyone to hold their breaths. What is Xiaoyaro doing? Is he going to pull out the god's weeping halberd? How is that possible? This was inserted here by the first god of war. Even a quasi-immortal level expert can't pull it out. That's right. I heard from the Academy's elders that unless one is the inheritor of the first god of war's will, no matter how strong one is, they won't be able to pull it out. Zhang Xiaoyao's action undoubtedly shocked everyone. Since no one had pulled out the god's weeping halberd since ancient times, the god of war mountain had gradually become a battlefield. As for the god's weeping halberd, no one would even try to pull it out. However, at this moment, Zhang Xiaoyao's right hand was holding the god's weeping halberd. "Oh, you want to pull out the god's weeping halberd?" Prince Mo Jie's expression was indifferent. He tilted his head slightly and looked at Zhang Xiaoyao. Naturally, he had heard of the god's weeping halberd. However, Zhang Xiaoyao only wanted to pull it out now. Wasn't it a bit of last-minute preparation? Tens of thousands of eyes fell on Zhang Xiaoyao. Astonishment, watching a show, doubt, sneering, all kinds of expressions, and so on. However, Zhang Xiaoyao didn't care at all. Divine power surged in his body. On his wrist, the black 6-point star mark seemed to be faintly emerging. "Rise!" Zhang Xiaoyao roared and shook one of his arms. In an instant, the blood-like patterns on the god's weeping halberd seemed to come alive and began to squirm. Then, they directly turned into blood vessels and emerged from the halberd, piercing into Zhang Xiaoyao's wrist and arm. Rumble. The entire god's weeping halberd was pulled out inch by Zhang Xiaoyao. The entire god of war mountain began to tremble. Cracks cracked open and mountain rocks rolled down. Heaven and earth shook and the universe trembled. A terrifying aura that was as domineering as an abyss swept across the sky for 100,000 miles. Boom. It was accompanied by a shocking sound that seemed to open up the universe. The god's weeping halberd was pulled out by Zhang Xiaoyao and pointed diagonally at the sky. The 10 provinces of the foreign realm trembled at this moment. Chapter 966. An indescribable scene appeared in front of everyone. On the peak of War God Mountain, a handsome prince in white pulled out the god's weeping halberd that had been sealed for many eras and pointed it at the sky. This extremely shocking scene petrified everyone. They held their breaths as if their souls were frozen at this moment. How is this possible? Not to mention Prince Bian, Li Jiuyi, and the others. Even Prince Mo Jie, who had a transcendent bearing, had an extremely interesting expression at this moment. He couldn't remain calm. The legend of the first war god, the god's weeping halberd, could be said to be known by everyone in the 10 continents of the foreign realm. But now, this god's weeping halberd that should only be mentioned in legends had been pulled out by someone. This kind of shock was indescribable. My young friend really did it. The god's weeping halberd has recognized its master. Elder Mu's pupils were trembling. He saw that the bloodlines on the god's weeping halberd were like roots, piercing into Zhang Xiaoyao's arm and absorbing his blood. This meant that the god's weeping halberd had truly recognized its master. It wasn't pulled out by force through some method. This was very important. That halberd. Looking at the god's weeping halberd, Su Hongyi suddenly felt a stabbing pain in her head. A blurry scene appeared. On a battlefield of blood and fire, a blurry peerless figure stood side by side with her, holding the god's weeping halberd in his hand. Of course, this illusion disappeared in a flash. Even Su Hongyi herself was puzzled. How can you pull out the god's weeping halberd? Prince Mo Jie was shocked and in disbelief. He could feel the world-destroying power from the god's weeping halberd that made the heavens tremble. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyao, who had pulled out the god's weeping halberd, felt that the god's weeping halberd was frantically absorbing his chaos blood. This was a world-destroying demonic weapon. If it were anyone else, they might have been instantly sucked dry by the god's weeping halberd. But Zhang Xiaoyao was different. The chaotic physique gave him an almost endless source of power. His qi and blood were also extremely vigorous. The blood threads that extended from the god's weeping halberd pierced into Zhang Xiaoyao's arm like blood vessels, absorbing his chaos blood. Zhang Xiaoyao's black hair turned white inch by inch. In the end, it was as white as snow. Zhang Xiaoyao's appearance was already peerless, and her temperament was transcendent. At this moment, he was wearing a white robe and had white hair. With the god's weeping halberd in his hand, he stood proudly on top of the god of war. This scene was deeply engraved in the eyes of everyone present. "Sir, Tushan Chuanchuan's eyes were blurred. It wasn't just her. Tushan Wanwan, Su Hongyi, Fei Qingxue. Even Luo Xiangling, who had been secretly observing and hadn't taken the initiative to show himself, felt his heart tremble. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyao's white hair was 30,000 feet long, and he was a transcendent being. Apart from the 3 layers of snow on the monarch's body, who else in the world is worthy of wearing white? In the hearts of all the women, there was only this line that matched this scene. You, sensing Zhang Xiaoyao's astonishing aura, Prince Mojie's face became extremely solemn. At the beginning, Prince Mojie was 100% confident that he could suppress Zhang Xiaoyao. But now, he had no confidence at all. Because at this moment, Zhang Xiaoyao was too mysterious, and his aura was too powerful. He was like the legendary first-generation god of war, the demon king who destroyed the world. Let's fight. Let me see how strong you are after you pulled out the god's weeping halberd. Prince Mojie shouted coldly, and his voice exploded in the sky as if he was emboldening himself. However, Zhang Xiaoyao was still expressionless. The supreme divine blood in his body began to boil. The 4th supreme technique was used, and all his attributes skyrocketed several times. At the same time, a surge of universe origin energy, superimposed with the chaos energy, surged out from Zhang Xiaoyao's body and poured into the god's weeping halberd. Buzz! The god's weeping halberd's blade vibrated, and an earth-shaking tremor sounded, which could shatter the void. A destructive aura swept across the place. The expressions of all the sky prides changed, and they were terrified by this destructive aura. Even Elder Mu and the other elders of the academy had a change of expression as they sensed an aura that made them solemn. How strong are you? Ha! Zhang Xiaoyao laughed. You can't afford to accept my power. Zhang Xiaoyao held the god's weep halberd in his hand as soon as he finished speaking, thrusting it at Prince Mojie. The 4th supreme technique was superimposed with the universe origin energy and the chaos energy, in addition to the destructive aura of the god's weeping halberd itself. This halberd split open heaven and earth and shattered the universe. A crack in the void spanned thousands of miles across the sky. The stars shook, heaven and earth lost their color, and the sun and moon lost their light. It was as if heaven and earth were going to be annihilated by this halberd. Prince Mojie's expression changed drastically when he felt this destructive aura. Invulnerable, tenfold realm. Prince Mojie let out a long roar, and the 10 immunity divine halos around him released endless brilliance. It was as if they had turned into 10 layers of worlds, enveloping his body layer by layer. Immovable Vajra. This was the ultimate divine ability that Prince Mojie had refined. He was immune to everything. Even an expert of the same level would find it difficult to break through this tenfold realm when using a forbidden technique. Any powerful divine ability would be weakened by this tenfold realm layer by layer, and its power would be suppressed to the extreme in the end. However, Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flickered. The God of War catalogue's function was not only to deduce divine abilities. It also had another ability, which was to detect the weakness of other divine abilities and break them with brute force. This tenfold realm was perfect in the eyes of outsiders. However, in the eyes of Zhang Xiaoyao, who had cultivated the God of War catalogue, there were traces of flaws. Although they were difficult to discover, they really existed. Kill! Zhang Xiaoyao shouted, and the god's weeping halberd tore through the sky. Rumble! The two of them collided, and it was as if Mars had collided with Earth. Boom! 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 The dark golden god's weeping halberd went straight for the root of the problem, breaking through layers of realms. Beside Prince Mojie, the divine rings of immunity shattered one after another. How is this possible? Prince Mojie exclaimed, and his face was distorted in disbelief. His 10 divine rings were immune to the power of most divine abilities of the same level. However, it could not weaken Zhang Xiaoyao at all. There was only one reason. However, Zhang Xiaoyao was simply too powerful at the moment. The god's weeping halberd was boundlessly domineering, destroying all obstacles, slaying gods if gods blocked it, slaying Buddha if Buddha blocked it. This was the inextinguishable battle intent of the first god of war, and also the destructive power of the god's weeping halberd. No one could block the god's weeping halberd. The sharp halberd blade tore through the tenfold realm and directly landed in front of Prince Mojie. No. Prince Mojie let out an exclamation that sounded as if his liver and gallbladder were about to break. Poochie. The halberd blade pierced through Prince Mojie's body, and sparkling blood splattered everywhere. The god's weeping halberd nailed Prince Mojie's body to the god of war mountain. The terrifying destructive power contained in the halberd directly turned Prince Mojie's internal organs and primordial spirit into minced meat and nothingness. Dead silence. After the extreme collision, there was extreme silence. All sounds between heaven and earth were lost. There were only faces filled with endless shock and horror. One of the 7 minor emperors of the foreign domain, Prince Mojie. He was nailed to death by Jun Xiaoyao's halberd on the god of war mountain.